Everybody writes letters. I mean, from your very first job hunt to your retirement valedictory, you write letters, you type emails, you send pitches. But here is the brutal truth. Almost nobody knows how to actually write a message that guarantees a response.
Yeah, because we live in the age of skepticism. I mean,
Yeah.
every single day, people are just bombarded by hundreds of messages,
Thousands, probably.
right? Thousands. And if your communication focuses on being creative, instead of effectively moving the reader to act, your message is going straight into the garbage.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. If you are listening to this and you've ever stared at a blinking cursor, wondering why your pitch was met with total silence, you are in the right place.
We are unpacking the foundational rules of what the source material calls forced communication.
Which is such a fascinating term.
It is. It's the noble art of causing a client or a customer to perform a positive act as the direct result of reading your words. If you're in business, mastering these mechanical tools will instantly lift your emails above the clutter.
Turn those apathetic readers into eager responders. So let's just jump right into the first key idea, which is the 3 pillars of forced communication.
Right, so the author argues that the purpose of any direct response message is not to be remembered. It's to get the reader to perform an act.
Which sounds obvious, but people mess it up constantly.
Oh, all the time. To do this, you need 3 things. First, a single coherent statement. Second, you have to get to the point. And third, you have to tell the reader exactly what to do.
Okay, so let's break down that first one, the single coherent statement.
Yeah, so it's not just mindlessly repeating words. It's about thinking before typing. What is the specific imperative? Because specifics sell, while generalities just fail. Subtlety actually suppresses response.
But wait, so you shouldn't just rush at the reader like a bowling ball, right? Like
Yeah.
knocking down all the pins at once with every feature your product has.
No, definitely not. Unless your offer is intrinsically unbelievable, like, I don't know, free gold bars, you have to weave a pattern around a core nucleus.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that leads to the second pillar, getting to the point. The source provides 4 short opening phrases that literally force a writer to stop rambling and get to the point.
I loved these. They're like psychological cheat codes.
They really are. The first one is just, for example.
Because that forces you to provide specific evidence. You can't just be vague after saying, for example.
Exactly. The second phrase is, why? Because.
Sure.
This one dismantles skepticism and builds rapport. You're acknowledging their doubt.
Right, you're stepping into their shoes.
Yeah. The third is, the reason is.
Mm.
This moves you past unsupported claims into actual logic.
But the fourth one is the one that really got me.
Oh, I have something you want.
Yes, it's so bold. Like if I'm scrolling my inbox and I see I have something you want, it immediately hooks my interest. I have to know what it is.
It's a total pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And mechanically, it forces you, the writer, to immediately explain what that thing is.
So for you listening, before you write your next pitch, literally write your specific imperative in the margins. Then use phrases like, for example, to force yourself out of that abstract fluff.
And then the third pillar, tell them what to do.
Mm.
Don't just say, hope to hear from you. Give a clear, frictionless directive.
Click this link, sign this paper. Right, so that's the mechanics of the message. But the text also gets into the psychology of the messenger. The second key idea is all about choosing your persona. Who are we?
Yeah, because a letter is a single, coherent statement that projects an image. And the recipient's psychological reaction is to that specific image.
Not just to the offer itself.
Right. You have to ask, who are you? Are you pedantic? Are you casual? Are you a severe expert? Or just a plain country boy? The offer alone cannot establish rapport. You need a persona for that.
And this is where it gets really interesting with the historical analogies the author uses.
Oh, the analogies are great.
Like if you are Albert Einstein, you would never start a letter with, I have a free gift for you.
No, the mask would completely slip. And if you are P.T. Barnum, the ultimate showman, you wouldn't say, it's late and I'm tired, but I have to tell you this.
Right, because that's Florence Nightingale. That's the dedicated nurse working by candlelight. Barnum is all exclamation points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Lucrezia Borgia, the master of dangerous secrets, she might write, visualize this scenario.
So the practical takeaway for you is decide who you are before you type the first word. Put on that mask.
And do not take it off until the letter is done. Consistency is what builds the rapport. If you start folksy and end sounding like a corporate lawyer, you lose them.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance. Okay, so we have the pillars, we have the persona. Now let's talk about the actual look of the page. Key idea 3, the formatting mechanics of readability, the 10 easy pieces.
This is all about visual pacing, the mechanical rules that dictate how the eye moves.
Like keeping the first sentence short.
Yes, a long first sentence warns the reader that this is going to be hard slogging. You want a short, punchy opener to pull them in.
And then there's the rule about paragraphs. No paragraphs longer than 7 lines.
Right, because long blocks of text are intimidating. They look like a gray brick wall.
Okay, let's unpack this, though. Because what if a paragraph simply has to be longer than 7 lines to explain, like, a really complex thought or compliance issue?
The source have the best answer for this. You just type a period and start a new paragraph.
That's it. Just hit enter.
Just hit enter. Reader fatigue instantly vanishes when you break text into chewable bites. One complex thought can easily be 3 short paragraphs.
It's basically a visual illusion.
Completely. And speaking of visuals, you should always single space the text within a paragraph, but double space between the paragraphs.
Right, because double spacing a whole letter makes it look gray and monotonous. It balloons a tight 2-page pitch into 4 pages.
Exactly. But the most devious rule in this section is the page break rule.
Oh, this blew my mind.
In a multi-page letter, never end a paragraph at the bottom of a page. You must break the page in the middle of a sentence.
It's exactly like a late-night television movie. It doesn't open with credits, it opens with action. And right before the commercial, someone pulls a gun.
Yes, if you leave the reader hanging mid-sentence, they have no closure, they are your captive, and they literally must turn the page to resolve the thought.
So format your next important email or memo with generous white space, 0 double-space lines within paragraphs, and maximum 5 to 7 line blocks. And if you have a PDF proposal, use that cliffhanger trick.
It's all about removing visual friction.
Okay, so we're formatted. Now we have to actually say hello. Key idea 4 is the strategic open. The rule here is no sneaking and no antiquity.
Right. Don't sneak up on the reader.
Yeah.
You have to fire your biggest gun first. We are at point-blank range when reading begins.
You have their attention for maybe 3 seconds.
Exactly. And you will never have that big an advantage over the reader again.
Yeah.
If you delay the point by talking about, the history of the horseless carriage before selling a vacation.
Like that crazy example in the book.
Yeah, it suppresses response. You have to hit them with value immediately.
So what does this all mean for how we literally address the reader at the top?
The biggest rule is never start a letter with "Dear Sir" or "Dear Madam."
It sounds so stiff.
It's 19th century pomposity. It creates an arm's length distance when our whole goal is to shovel sand away from the obstacle of their skepticism.
So what are the alternatives?
Well, the source suggests things like "Dear Friend" or "Good Morning" or "Dear Fellow Member." Even highly specific ones like "Dear Tennis Nut."
I love Dear Tennis Nut. It shows you know exactly who they are.
There's a really subtle punctuation nuance here, too. The source prefers a comma over a colon after the greeting.
Wait, really? A comma instead of a colon?
Yeah, because a colon is too formal. It stifles intimacy. It says, "I am about to present a formal declaration." A comma says, "We're having a conversation."
That is such a tiny detail, but it makes so much sense. So review your salutations. If you sound like a 19th century bill collector, you are losing the psychological battle before the first sentence.
Definitely. Which brings us to the most valuable parts of the page.
Yes. Key idea 5. High-value real estate. We're talking overlines, the PS, and envelopes. The data shows these are the most read parts of a letter.
If you misuse them, you destroy your entire campaign. Let's look at the overline first. This is the text above the salutation.
Right.
You have to contrast modern overlines with old-fashioned Johnson boxes. A Johnson box is that centered text, completely boxed in by asterisks.
Oh, like those old spammy letters. Big news inside.
Exactly. They often give away the pitch entirely too early. The reader sees it, decides they don't want it, and throws the letter away before your sales argument even begins.
So it ruins the suspense. Okay, what about the PS? The postscript.
The PS is actually the second most read part of the letter.
Because people skip to the bottom to see who it's from and what the catch is.
Exactly. It's human nature. So the rule is the PS must reinforce a key selling motivator or mention an extra benefit. It can't just be "Thanks for reading."
Right.
And there's a great test for this. If you can move the PS into the body text and it makes the letter stronger, then your PS was weak.
Oh, wow. It should be its own standalone closer. Like, to get your item, call our toll-free number before the expiration date.
Yes. Or an extra bonus. If we hear from you by May 31, It has to pull the reader back into the text.
And this connects directly to envelopes or subject lines in emails. The source has this clarity commandment, right?
Right. Obfuscation plus complication equals negation. Basically, if you confuse them, you lose them.
So what's the biggest mistake people make here?
Wasting the word important on an envelope. It's cheap, it's chest-thumping, and it's totally ineffective in the age of skepticism.
Because it's only important to the sender. The reader doesn't care.
Exactly. So never treat the PS or the subject line as an afterthought. They are powerful sales closers.
Okay, this brings us to key idea 6, which might be my favorite. Manufactured spontaneity. Specifically, rule number 9, marginal notes.
This is a fascinating psychological trick. Marginal notes must be handwritten, maximum 4 to 5 words, and printed in the exact same color as the signature, usually processed blue ink.
Processed blue. What is fascinating here is why it works. It creates this illusion of spontaneous enthusiasm.
Right.
It looks like the author was just, reading over the printed letter, got super excited, and grabbed a pen to physically add, "Here's your free bonus," before putting it in the mail.
It breaks the sterile, mass-produced feel of a printed page. It feels human.
But wait, I have to ask, if everyone starts doing this blue ink trick, doesn't it just lose its power? Doesn't the audience become blind to it?
That is the exact right question, and the source has a brilliant concept for this. The mini generalization versus the maxi generalization.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the mini generalization is this specific tactic. A handwritten overline outpulls a typed one, or blue ink increases response.
Right, the tactical rule.
But the maxi generalization is the overarching human behavior rule. Sameness equals boredom, and overuse equals abuse. When those two collide, the maxi generalization always wins. Rules in marketing are fluid, not stagnant. If everyone uses blue ink, it becomes sameness and it stops working.
There's that great analogy in the book about Mozart.
Yes. When Mozart composed his symphonies, the orchestration was mind-blowing for audiences of his time. But if he played those exact same arrangements today, modern audiences would be underwhelmed.
Because our ears have evolved. We're used to heavier bass, complex production. We're immune to the old tricks.
Exactly. Communication has to evolve because audiences adapt.
So the practical takeaway here is you have to test your letters constantly. Letters and emails are cheap to test. Try 2 versions to see which motivator works best for your specific audience right now. Fear, greed, exclusivity. You have to let the audience tell you what works.
You can't just run on autopilot.
So let's tie this all together. We've explored the hidden mechanics of influence today. I mean, from breaking paragraphs mid-sentence to using processed blue ink for marginal notes, all the way to choosing your exact persona before you even start typing.
And the soul of this entire chapter, the core insight, is that true, effective communication is not about showing off your vocabulary. It's not about being clever.
It's about form serving substance.
Exactly. Every single mechanical rule we discussed exists for one reason only: to remove friction from the reading process.
Right.
You are gently but firmly guiding the reader toward a positive action, establishing rapport every step of the way.
It's invisible architecture.
It is. But now that you've mastered these mechanical rules, the architecture of the page, the psychology of the formatting, how exactly do you write those crucial first few words? That brings us to the endless possibilities of letter openings. But well, that is a deep dive for another day.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and applying these tools to your own work. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Think about the last marketing email or letter you actually read all the way through, the one you actually clicked on. Ask yourself, were you reading it because it was cleverly written, or because the sender used these exact invisible mechanics to quietly take you by the hand and lead you exactly where they wanted you to go? You can write the most brilliant, absolutely persuasive pitch in human history. But if your paragraph is like 8 lines long instead of 7, the human brain will subconsciously reject it before reading a single word.
Oh, totally. It's wild.
Right. And today we are looking at what we're calling the invisible geometry of persuasion. Because, we spend countless hours obsessing over our vocabulary, our narrative arc, the substance of our offers, right?
Oh, absolutely. The wording.
Yeah, exactly, the wording. But we are completely blind to the fact that the physical layout of the text dictates whether the recipient's brain will even allow them to process the message.
It really is the ultimate blind spot for modern professionals.
Yeah.
We treat writing as this purely intellectual exercise.
Right, like an essay.
Yeah, we assume that if the logic is sound and, the prose is elegant, the reader will just naturally follow along. But reading is profoundly physical. It requires energy.
Physical energy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It imposes cognitive load. So what we are really talking about today in this deep dive is how to engineer the mechanics of a message so that consuming it feels completely frictionless for you.
And to do that, we are unpacking Chapter 2. It's titled 10 Easy Pieces, From Herschel Gordon Lewis's Guide to Direct Response Copywriting.
Such a classic.
It really is. And this is all about the foundational, like the mechanical procedures of what he calls force communication.
Forced communication, yeah, that's a great term.
Right. And whether you are an entrepreneur trying to scale a business, or maybe a manager proposing a new initiative, or honestly, just someone trying to get a timely response to an important email,
Which is all of us, right?
literally everyone, you are about to learn the specific typographical and structural levers that basically command attention.
What makes Lewis's framework so enduring is that he isn't giving us a subjective style guide here.
No, not at all.
Right. He isn't interested in helping you find your creative voice or anything like that. He is laying out a psychological framework that's basically disguised as mechanical rules.
Disguised as rules, yeah.
I love that. Because he forces us to look at a page not as a canvas for our own, self-expression, but as an interface.
An interface, like an app.
Exactly like an app. And if that interface is poorly designed, the user, in this case, the reader, will simply abandon it.
They just bounce.
Yep, they bounce.
Well, let's start right there with this overarching philosophy of force communication. Because before he even gets into the specific layout rules, Lewis drops this definition that really reorients how you think about writing entirely.
It really shifts the paradigm.
It does. He says that a well-written business communication is an amalgam of three things: sales psychology, word manipulation, and mechanical application.
I always just find it fascinating to look at what he leaves out there.
Right. Notice the deliberate exclusion in that definition.
Yeah, he doesn't mention poetic prose
No.
or narrative beauty or cleverness,
None of it.
He defines it strictly in terms of psychology, manipulation, and mechanics. It's really an engineering perspective.
An engineering perspective. That's a perfect way to phrase it.
And the reason professionals struggle with this is because we are all products of what he calls a vertical education.
Oh man, this concept of vertical education is so fascinating to me because it explains so much of the bad corporate jargon we see every single day.
Oh, the worst jargon.
Right, because in academia, you are rewarded for complexity.
Absolutely.
You write a 20-page essay to prove to a professor that you did the reading.
Right, you bump the margins, use the big words.
Exactly. You use this massive vocabulary and these intricate sentence structures just to demonstrate intellectual rigor. You are literally graded on your ability to sound sophisticated.
Which is fine for school, but academic writing is performative.
Right.
The writer prioritizes their own self-glorification. They want to be perceived as a deep thinker.
Of course.
But when you take that vertical education, that mindset into the marketplace, it becomes a massive liability.
Because no one has the time.
Exactly. In the real world, the reader isn't being paid to grade your paper. They are busy, they're distracted, and honestly, they owe you nothing.
Zero.
So if your sole job is to cause a target to perform a positive act like to click a link, sign a contract, or approve a budget, then performative complexity is your greatest enemy.
Okay, I hear that. I understand the critique of academic jargon, but let's unpack this a bit. I want to challenge the idea that creativity has no place here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if I'm writing a pitch to a really sophisticated client, I want to stand out, right? I want to sound innovative.
Sure, you want to be memorable.
Yeah. And if I strictly adhere to this rigid set of mechanical layout rules and I prioritize, quote unquote, manipulation over creativity, doesn't that just lead to a flat, robotic piece of communication?
I see where you're going with this.
It just feels like you're telling me to build a house that's a square concrete block instead of a beautiful custom-designed mansion?
It's a super common fear for sure. But I think it misunderstands the role of the mechanics here.
How so?
Well, Lewis isn't saying you shouldn't be creative or that your ideas shouldn't be innovative.
Okay.
He's saying that these mechanical tools do not replace your imagination. They actually showcase it properly.
Showcase it.
Yeah, to use your architectural analogy, right? You can design the most breathtaking avant-garde mansion in the world.
Right. Gorgeous interior, everything.
Exactly. The interior can be filled with brilliant creative ideas.
Yeah.
But if you refuse to build any doors, because you think a rectangular piece of wood, ruins your aesthetic vision,
Oh, wow.
no one is ever going to get inside to see your brilliance. Creativity without mechanical accessibility is just an invisible mansion.
That's it.
The mechanics are the doors.
Mechanics are the doors. Wow, that clarifies it perfectly.
Right.
So you aren't compromising the substance of the idea. You are just ensuring the recipient can actually cross the threshold to experience it.
Precisely. And Lucas is brutal about this reality.
Oh, I know he is.
He states that a business letter cannot claim success if the recipient simply reads it and thinks, wow, that was cleverly written.
Right. That's just an ego boost.
Exactly. That is an ego metric. A letter can only claim success if the recipient performs the desired action as a result of having read it.
Did the phone ring?
Right. The phone rang, the meeting was booked, the sale was made. If the action doesn't occur, well, your creativity failed.
Which means the very first step before you type a single word is a massive shift in mindset.
Absolutely.
You have to strip away the ego entirely. You stop asking, how can I sound smart? And you start asking, what mechanical tools will make this effortless to read?
That's the golden question.
And that brings us to the first practical application of this philosophy, which happens literally the millisecond the reader's eyes hit the page.
Right, the first sentence. Lewis calls it the early warning system for the reader.
The rule is incredibly simple, yet it's almost universally violated by everybody. Keep your first sentence short.
So short.
Because the moment someone opens an email or a letter, they aren't actually reading yet.
No, they're scanning.
Right. They are doing a subconscious visual scan of the geometry of the text. They are assessing the threat level of the cognitive load.
It is a literal fight-or-flight response triggered by visual processing.
Fight or flight from an email.
Seriously. Because human eyes move in these rapid jumps called saccades, right? Followed by brief pauses called fixations.
Okay, saccades and fixations.
Yeah, and when we look at a dense, sprawling block of text right at the top of a page, our brain calculates the sheer muscular and cognitive effort required to parse it.
It's doing math before you even read a word.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If that first sentence wraps across 3 or 4 lines, the brain instantly registers fatigue.
Wow.
The immediate subconscious thought is, I don't have the energy for this right now. I'll read it later.
And we all know that later means never.
100%. It goes to the bottom of the inbox and dies.
Let's contrast the two examples Lewis provides in the text, because I think it highlights exactly how this visual fatigue manifests in actual writing.
Yeah, these examples are great.
Right. Imagine opening a business proposal, and this is the very first sentence you are hit with, okay? Quote, if you'll give me 1.5 minutes of your time, in turn, I'll give you information about an opportunity you probably never thought would be available to you in today's marketplace.
Oh, it's so painful.
It is. That is 46 words of pure throat clearing.
And notice the deep insecurity in that writing.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, listen to the phrasing. If you'll give me, in turn I'll give you. You probably never thought.
It's begging.
It is? It's timid, it's overly polite, and it demands a massive cognitive investment just to parse the conditional grammar before it even tells you what the letter is actually about.
Now contrast that with his suggested alternative, which is, I want 1.5 minutes of your time.
Boom.
Boom. 9 words. It fits on a single line.
The 9-word version establishes immediate command.
It really does.
It doesn't ask for permission in a meandering way. It just states a confident parameter.
Right.
But more importantly, from a mechanical perspective, the reader's eye can take in that entire sentence in a single fixation.
A single fixation.
Right. There is zero visual fatigue. You have successfully guided them through the front door.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of the 46-word sentence when you're typing, though, because typing feels like this safe, insulated activity.
Oh, absolutely.
You are sitting alone at your desk, agonizing over every nuance, trying to sound smart. But Lewis provides a really great reality check here.
The speaking analogy.
Yes. He says, imagine you are speaking to a stranger who has no reason to respect your position. You would walk up to someone at a networking conference, tap them on the shoulder, and just unleash a 46-word, multi-clause preamble.
Because in verbal communication, we can instantly read the other person's body language.
Right, you'd see them mentally check out.
Instantly. If you start a convoluted preamble in person, you will see their eyes glaze over. You will see them physically pull away.
Yeah, they start looking around the room for the exit.
Exactly. We intuitively know to be direct and punchy when speaking. And Lewis is basically demanding that we apply that same verbal urgency to our written geometry.
So the practical test here for you listening is to literally read your opening sentence out loud.
Speak it, don't just read it in your head.
Right. If you have to take a breath before you hit the period, you failed. You are already losing your reader. It's like offering someone a drink from a fire hose instead of just handing them a glass of water.
That's exactly it.
Find the core subject and verb, put a period after it, and move on.
And once you've successfully tricked the brain into reading that first short sentence, you encounter the next mechanical hurdle.
Right.
How do you keep their eyes moving down the page without triggering that visual exhaustion we just talked about?
And this leads directly into tips number 2 and 3, the visual psychology of paragraphs and spacing.
Which is where people really start to resist.
Oh, they hate this. Because this is where we get into the strict numerical rules of forced communication. Lewis states definitively, no paragraph should be longer than 7 lines.
7 lines.
Not 7 sentences, 7 visual lines of text on the physical page or the screen.
And coupled with that is the rule of spacing.
Right.
You single space the actual text within the paragraph, but you must double space between the paragraphs.
Let's unpack the spacing issue first, because Lewis goes into the history of double spacing. And I think it completely reframes a habit most of us haven't questioned since, like, middle school.
It really does.
Because why are we so conditioned to double space our writing? It's everywhere.
Well, it is a historical artifact of the editing process.
Okay, take us back.
Before digital word processors, right?
Yeah.
Manuscripts, academic papers, press releases, they were typed on typewriters.
The loud, clunky ones.
Exactly. And they were double-spaced for a very specific utilitarian reason.
Which was?
The editor, or the professor, needed the physical blank space between the typed lines to write in their blue pencil corrections.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the double space was designed as a workspace for the editor. It was never meant as a visual aid for the final consumer of the text.
But because we were all trained to double space our essays in school, to leave room for the teacher's red pen, we just carried this deeply ingrained physical habit into professional business communication, where it actually works against us.
Totally. When you double space a finished letter, you are presenting the reader with a bloated document.
It looks huge.
It does. Lewis points out that double spacing balloons the text. It spreads the words out so far that the eye loses its tether.
What do you mean by losing its tether?
Well, remember the saccadic jumps we talked about?
Yeah, the eye movements.
When the lines are too far apart, the jump from the end of one line down to the beginning of the next becomes slightly more difficult. It's slightly more prone to losing its place.
Oh, I've definitely done that, where you read the same line twice by accident.
Exactly. It diffuses the cohesive energy of the message.
So the text itself must be single-spaced to feel dense, urgent, and cohesive, but you use the double space between the paragraphs as a deliberate visual reset.
That's right. Think of a long paragraph as a stretched rubber band. As the reader's eye travels down line after line of continuous text, visual tension builds up. The cognitive load increases.
They're holding their breath, visually speaking.
Precisely. The double space between paragraphs is the release of that tension. It is a microscopic moment of rest for the brain. The white space is the literal reward for finishing the block of text.
Which brings us back to that 7-line rule. Because if you withhold that white space reward for 10, 12, or 15 lines, the rubber band snaps.
It snaps and they skim.
The reader gives up and starts skimming. But okay, I have to push back hard on this 7-line limit again.
I knew you would.
I can't help it. What if I am explaining a highly layered, complex idea that simply takes more than 7 lines to resolve?
Right.
It feels wrong to just chop it in half. It feels like cutting off a movie scene right in the middle of the climax. If I arbitrarily hit the enter key just because I reached line 8, doesn't that destroy the rhythmic cadence of the argument?
It is the eternal conflict between the auditory rhythm of the writer and the visual processing of the reader.
Yes, because it sounds so good in my head.
Exactly. You are prioritizing how the argument sounds in your head over how it looks to their eye.
Guilt is charged.
And Lewis actually addressed this exact objection when speaking to professional copywriters. Someone literally asked him, but what if a paragraph absolutely has to be longer than 7 lines to complete the thought?
And his answer's just beautifully pragmatic.
It's hilarious. He simply said, type a period and start a new paragraph.
Just type a period.
He refuses to concede the point.
He just tells them to chop it in half. Deal with it.
Because he understands a fundamental truth. A disrupted cadence is infinitely preferable to an abandoned reader.
Oh, that's good.
If you maintain your perfect intellectual rhythm, but the visual tension causes the reader to stop reading entirely, well, your perfect rhythm was completely useless.
You're performing for an empty room at that point.
Exactly. Breaking up the text doesn't destroy the thought. It just serves the thought in smaller, more digestible courses.
It forces you to view the return or enter key not just as a formatting tool, but as a literal weapon of persuasion.
It really is.
You are using it to manufacture momentum. Every time you hit that key, you are lowering the barrier to entry for the next sentence. You are creating a visual landscape that says, look how easy this is. It's just a few lines. You can read this quickly.
You are actively managing their cognitive load.
Right.
Now, once you have mastered this rhythm of short paragraphs and strategic white space, you reach the physical boundaries of the page itself.
The bottom margin.
Right. And this is where Lewis introduces a tactic that leverages human psychology to force the reader to keep going when they would otherwise naturally stop.
Honestly, this might be my favorite mechanical trick in the entire book. It's tip number 4, the mid-sentence cliffhanger.
It's so effective.
The rule is this. In a letter longer than one page, never, like literally never end a paragraph at the bottom of a page, except on the final page, of course.
Right.
You must always break the text so that it bleeds over to the next page in the middle of a sentence.
This plays directly on a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. Okay, tell us about that.
So, Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik discovered that human beings remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks significantly better than completed ones.
Really?
Yeah. Our brains crave closure. When a pattern is left unresolved, it creates this subtle, almost physical, psychological itch that just demands to be scratched.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you see this exploited in television all the time, particularly with the formatting of late-night syndication.
Well, that's a great example.
Right. If a network is airing a movie at 11:30 p.m., they do not open with 3 minutes of slow scrolling credits and establishing shots.
No, you'd be asleep.
Or you'd immediately change the channel. Instead, they drop you right into the middle of a high-speed car chase or a screaming match.
In media res.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They thrust you into an unresolved situation. Your brain demands to know the context of the conflict, so you keep the channel locked.
And print journalism has relied on this for over a century, too.
Oh, right, newspapers.
Yeah. If a front-page article continues on page 14, the editor will almost always force the jump in the middle of a sentence.
The district attorney announced today that he will absolutely not, under any circumstances, continued on page 14.
Exactly. You have no choice. You have to turn the page to resolve the tension.
But look at what happens if you ignore this mechanic. If you write a beautifully self-contained paragraph and it perfectly aligns with the bottom margin of page 1, you have just provided your reader with a psychological exit ramp.
You gave them an out.
The thought is complete. The tension is resolved.
Their curiosity is temporarily satiated. And unless they are already intensely motivated to buy your product or agree with your proposal, you have given them zero compelling reason to physically exert the effort to flip that page over.
Right, because turning a page is work.
It is. The physical act of turning a page or scrolling to the next screen is a micro-commitment. You have to engineer a scenario where their desire for closure overpowers their natural inertia.
So practically speaking, for you listening, when you are reviewing a multi-page document, whether it's a printed letter or a PDF proposal, you have to audit your page breaks.
Manually.
Yes, manually. If you see a paragraph ending neatly at the bottom of the page, you have to go back and rewrite. Add a sentence above it, or intentionally break the paragraph prematurely so that the reader is left hanging on a conjunction.
It feels weird to do at first.
It feels incredibly counterintuitive. You are formatting something to look intentionally broken at the margin, but that brokenness is the exact trapdoor that keeps them engaged.
You are maintaining command of the reader's attention. But, maintaining attention requires more than just formatting tricks.
Sure.
It requires a deep understanding of the reader's modern context.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Lewis transitions from the physical geometry of the page to the architecture of the narrative itself with tip number 5. Don't sneak up on the reader.
He also refers to this as firing the big gun.
Yes, fire the big gun.
This is fundamentally about respecting the reader's time in what he calls the age of skepticism. It is a massive warning against the slow, winding, historical buildup.
And to understand why this rule is so critical, we really have to look at the evolution of marketing communication.
Right.
Lewis uses a brilliant example in the book to highlight a style of writing that used to work, but has now become actively detrimental.
I am so glad we are dissecting this specific example because, honestly, reading it in the book is almost physically painful.
It really is.
He presents this hypothetical opening to a sales letter, and it goes like this, quote, "This story begins around the turn of the century when times were peaceful and big fortunes could be made. Way back then, someone took a look at a contraption a lot of people still called a horseless carriage, and they said, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could start these vehicles without cranking them by hand? Old Silas broke his arm cranking his machine, and the dang thing never would go."
Okay, let's pause there.
Right. So I'm reading this, and I'm trying to be a good sport. I'm assuming we are going to talk about automotive history, or maybe like a new car part.
Which would make sense.
But then the writer hits us with the second paragraph. Quote, "Half a century later, a guy named Alan Shepard climbed into a different contraption, and a lot of smoke came out of the bottom end. Wheh! Within a couple of minutes, our first astronaut was not only out of sight, he'd made history."
At this point, the reader is experiencing massive cognitive dissonance.
I have total whiplash. We went from an anecdotal story about old Silas breaking his arm on a Model T straight to Alan Shepard going into orbit, and I am 2 dense paragraphs into this letter, and I still have zero idea what this person is actually trying to sell me.
They are completely hiding the ball.
Completely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what Lewis is illustrating here is the friction between 2 fundamental rules of marketing psychology. He categorizes them as the mini generalization and the maxi generalization.
Let's define those because that terminology is crucial to understanding why certain tactics stop working.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a mini generalization is a specific tactical observation about what works in a given moment.
Like a trend.
Exactly. For example, in the mid-20th century, a valid mini generalization might have been starting a sales letter with a folksy, historical anecdote builds intrigue and draws the reader in.
And people loved that back then.
They did. For a time, that was absolutely true. When information was scarce and people received far less mail, a narrative slow burn was a novel and effective way to capture attention.
But then it gets overused.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that is where it collides with the maxi generalization.
The immutable law.
Right. A maxi generalization is a universal, immutable law of human behavior. In this case, the maxi generalization is sameness equals boredom, overuse equals abuse.
Overuse equals abuse.
Yeah. As thousands of copywriters started using the exact same folksy historical buildups, the audience's brain adapted. The tactic lost its novelty and became a glaring signal of manipulation.
It's the equivalent of the modern recipe blog.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You just want to know how long to roast the chicken, right? But you have to scroll through 3 pages of a story about the author's grandmother's summer home in Tuscany.
When I was a child.
Exactly. We have all developed a deep, visceral impatience for people who bury the lead.
And when a tactical mini generalization comes into conflict with a universal maxi generalization, the maxi always wins.
The audience's impatience always wins.
Always. Their impatience will always overpower your clever narrative structure. In an era of information abundance where the reader is just swimming in an ocean of digital noise, you cannot afford to sneak up on them.
You have to lead with value.
You must lead with your primary value proposition.
Because you can't treat your reader like they're strapped to a chair in a darkened movie theater with nowhere else to go.
They're not captive.
They are not captive. They have 50 other unread emails sitting right next to yours. If you do not fire the big gun immediately, if you do not explicitly state why this communication is relevant to their life within the first few sentences, they will simply delete it.
And Lewis provides some very practical, almost forced transitional phrases to help writers break this habit of rambling.
Yeah, these are super helpful.
If you catch yourself wandering off into abstract storytelling, try physically typing the words, for example.
For example.
It acts as a circuit breaker for your prose.
Oh.
It forces you to immediately ground your abstract concept in a concrete, specific piece of evidence.
I love that.
Or try typing, the reason is. You cannot hide behind fluffy rhetoric after setting up that phrase. You are structurally obligated to deliver a logical point.
My favorite structural hack, he suggests, is opening with the blunt statement, I have something you want.
What's bold?
It's so bold.
Yeah.
But if you possess the audacity to start a communication with that phrase, you instantly command their curiosity, and more importantly, you put yourself on the hook.
You have to deliver.
You have no choice but to immediately follow that up by explaining exactly what that thing is. You are firing the big gun in paragraph 1.
Yeah.
Do not hide your value on page 3 because you think you are masterfully building suspense.
Suspense is for thrillers.
Exactly. Suspense in a thriller novel is entertaining. Suspense in a business proposition is just infuriating.
It really just demonstrates a profound lack of empathy for the reader's time.
Empathy, yeah.
And that theme of empathy, or, the lack thereof, brings us to a deeply fascinating mechanical detail.
Tip number 9.
Yes, tip number 9 in the chapter, which explores the psychology of how we present our own identity to the reader.
The mechanics of intimacy.
Exactly, specifically focused on the illegible signature.
Man, this one requires a lot of self-reflection. Lewis declares that there is never, under any circumstances, an excuse for an illegible signature on a business communication.
He does not mince words.
No. And I have to admit my own bias here. For years, my signature has basically been a sharp, jagged line with a vague loop at the end.
The executive scrawl.
Exactly. I subconsciously thought a messy, illegible scrawl was a status symbol.
Like a doctor's prescription.
Right. It implies I am a highly important executive signing hundreds of documents a day, and my time is far too valuable to carefully articulate every letter of my name. It feels like a power move.
It is absolutely a power move.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why it destroys a communication.
Why?
Because the illegible signature is entirely driven by the ego of the sender. It makes the writer feel important. But forced communication is not about how the writer feels. It is about how the reader reacts.
Right.
What is the subconscious message that a messy scrawl sends to the person on the receiving end?
It sends the message, you are not important enough for me to communicate clearly.
Exactly. It says, I am too busy and too powerful to bother writing my name legibly for you.
Ouch.
It instantly establishes a rigid hierarchy. It builds a wall between the sender and the receiver, draining all the intimacy and rapport you just spent the entire letter trying to build.
So you do all this work and then ruin it at the end.
Yeah. You're trying to persuade someone to take a positive action, to trust you, to buy from you, and then you sign off with an arrogant dismissal.
It's the visual equivalent of talking down to someone.
And Lewis notes that the absolute cardinal sin of this power dynamic is an illegible signature that does not even have a typed name printed directly beneath it.
Oh, that is the worst. Because at that point, it's not just arrogant, it's functionally broken.
Totally broken.
The recipient doesn't even know who to ask for if they want to reply.
You have completely severed the human connection. The communication degrades from a person-to-person interaction into a faceless bureaucratic decree.
Like getting a letter from the DMV.
Exactly. And the remedy for this is incredibly simple, but it requires checking your ego. Always ensure your name is typed clearly beneath your sign-off.
Always.
But beyond that, reconsider the physical appearance of your signature itself. A clear, deliberate signature is a subtle visual cue of respect. It communicates, I am taking the time to present myself clearly to you because this interaction matters to me.
It's a complete inversion of the power dynamic. You are lowering your own status to elevate the reader's comfort.
Which is true empathy.
Every single rule we've discussed so far, the short sentences, visual spacing, firing the big gun, clear signatures, it's all an act of service to the reader.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the final and perhaps most impactful mechanical rule in the chapter.
Tip number 10.
Yes. Because once you have built this highly optimized, empathetic vehicle for your message, how do you know what actual words to put inside it?
Right, the substance.
Use the letter itself as a diagnostic tool.
Tip number 10. Use letters to test. This is where the art of writing meets the rigorous science of direct response. Lewis argues that the letter is the most logical and by far the cheapest testing instrument in the entire marketing arsenal.
It's so easy to forget that long before Silicon Valley engineers were A/B testing landing pages.
Or optimizing conversion algorithms.
Right. Direct response marketers like Lewis were doing the exact same algorithmic split testing using physical postage and paper.
And the reason a basic letter is the ultimate testing tool, as opposed to, say, a highly designed full-color brochure, comes down to the friction of production.
Cost and time.
Exactly. If you want to test two different marketing angles in a glossy brochure, you have to involve graphic designers, you might have to pay for different die cuts or paper stocks, and you have to fund two separate expensive print runs. The cost of failure is incredibly high.
But a letter.
But a letter is just text. It costs virtually nothing to write two completely different versions of a pitch, print them out, and mail them to two separate segments of your audience. This is basically the analog version of A/B testing a website.
And by doing that, you are isolating the variable.
Just the words.
Right. You strip away the design, the colors, and the branding, and you test the pure psychological resonance of the message itself.
And Lewis provides a masterful framework for exactly what you should be testing. You aren't just testing random headlines, you are testing primal human motivators against each other.
This is where we get into the deep psychology of the chapter. He outlines what he calls the 5 great motivators of our era, alongside 2 soft motivators, which are convenience and pleasure.
But the big 5 are the heavy hitters.
Oh, absolutely. These are the psychological levers that actually cause human beings to take action. The 5 great ones are fear, exclusivity, greed, guilt, and the need for approval.
These are not high-minded, noble ideals.
Not at all. They are raw lizard brain instincts, and that is exactly why they are so devastatingly effective.
Let's walk through how a modern professional would actually design a test using these specific motivators, because this is where the theory becomes incredibly actionable for you listening. Let's say you are launching a new B2B software platform that helps companies organize their data and prevent security breaches.
Okay, good scenario.
How do you test these motivators against each other?
Well, you would draft 2 entirely distinct letters, each leaning heavily into a single psychological trigger. Let's take the most primal one first, fear.
Fear is essentially loss aversion.
Right.
So a fear letter for this software wouldn't talk about how great the UI is or whatever. It would focus entirely on the devastating consequences of not having it.
Exactly. Are your company's internal files sitting exposed on an unsecured server?
One breach could cost you your reputation, your clients, and your business.
Don't let your legacy end in a preventable disaster. You are pressing directly on the executive's anxiety.
So that's the fear letter. You're activating the threat response center of the brain.
Now, how would you write a letter for the exact same product, but utilizing the motivator of exclusivity?
Exclusivity appeals to status and ego, right? So I would pivot away from the threat of a data breach and focus on being part of an elite tier.
The velvet rope.
Yes. We are opening our advanced data architecture to a closed beta of only 50 enterprise partners. This is an invitation-only opportunity to join the top 1% of secure organizations.
Brilliant.
It's the exact same software, but now it's framed as a status symbol.
Perfect. So you have a fear letter and an exclusivity letter. You could also draft a greed letter, focusing purely on the massive ROI and cost savings the software generates.
Right.
Or a need for approval letter, focusing on how implementing this software will make the executive look like a visionary genius to their board of directors.
So you take these radically different letters, you format them with the exact same mechanical rules we just talked about.
Short first sentences.
7-line paragraphs.
Mid-sentence page break.
All of it. And you send them out.
And then you step back and let the market tell you the truth.
You stop guessing.
Exactly. You track the response rates.
Yeah?
You do not have to sit in a boardroom debating subjective opinions about what the customer might want. The data provides a definitive answer.
The numbers don't lie.
If the fear letter generates a 4% conversion rate and the exclusivity letter generates a 0.5% conversion rate, the debate is over.
Fear wins.
Fear wins. You know exactly what psychological nerve your product strikes, and you can scale your entire marketing strategy around that proven motivator.
It removes the ego from the equation entirely. You stop asking, is this a beautifully written letter? And you start asking, did it work?
It empowers you to be completely results-oriented.
And if we step back and look at the totality of these 10 easy pieces, we can see this unified theory of communication emerging.
It really is a cohesive system.
From the microscopic geometry of the first sentence to the macroeconomic strategy of A/B testing primal motivators, what Lewis is ultimately teaching is a masterclass in radical empathy.
Empathy through mechanics.
Yes.
Because bad writing is fundamentally selfish. It demands that the reader exert effort to understand the writer.
Look how smart I am. Figure it out.
Right. Forced communication flips that dynamic entirely. It demands that the writer exert immense mechanical effort behind the scenes so that the reader's experience is utterly effortless.
You are building the physical architecture that allows your idea to bypass the reader's natural defenses and enter their mind without friction. Which brings us to the core realization of this entire deep dive. Form is just as persuasive as substance.
That is a difficult reality for a lot of incredibly smart, creative people to accept.
It really is. You can possess a world-changing idea. You can have a product that will genuinely improve people's lives. But if you refuse to single-space your text,
If you trap your reader in 12-line paragraphs,
if you bury your value proposition behind 3 pages of historical throat clearing, and if you sign off with an arrogant scrawl,
the world will simply never see your brilliant idea.
never. Their brain will reject the container before it ever tastes the contents.
It is the difference between blindly hoping someone will listen to you and systematically engineering a scenario where they literally cannot look away.
Which brings us full circle back to that agonizing silence of the ignored email. If your pitches are falling flat, if your proposals are being met with deafening silence, don't immediately assume your idea is flawed.
Check your mechanics.
Check the geometry of your text. Build the doors to your mansion.
Build the doors.
Now that you know how to build the invisible mechanical foundation of a perfect letter, you are probably wondering, what exactly do you put at the very top of the page to guarantee they enter that front door in the first place?
The top of the page.
Next time, we will dive into the mysterious world of what's on top and what's in the middle to discover how visual typographical tricks like the legendary Johnson box can absolutely command your reader's attention from a mile away. Until then, keep your sentences short and your impact massive. Oh, and one last thing. Have you checked your sent folder lately to see if you accidentally ended a perfectly good paragraph at the absolute bottom of the page? You might want to go do that right now.
I want you to picture a scenario that, well, honestly, it might feel a little too familiar.
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Right. Think about a time when you poured like absolutely everything you had into a piece of communication. Maybe it was a crucial sales pitch or, a cold email to an investor you were just desperate to get a meeting with.
Yeah, high stakes.
Exactly. Or maybe it was just a really important business letter to a client you needed to land. And you spend days on this thing.
Just agonizing over it.
Agonizing.
Yeah.
You obsess over every single word. You polish the argument until it's airtight. You run it through grammar checkers. You tweak the vocabulary so it sounds perfectly professional. And you build this logical case that is, in your mind, completely undeniable.
A masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece. So you hit send or you drop it in the mail and you wait.
And you wait, and you hear absolutely nothing back.
Nothing.
It is a uniquely crushing professional experience.
It really is. You just sit there thinking, like, did they even read it? How could they read that brilliant argument and just ignore it?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But the harsh, uncomfortable truth that we're going to confront in this deep dive today is they probably didn't read it.
No, they didn't.
They probably threw it in the trash or they hit the delete button before they even finished the first sentence.
And the kicker is, it's not because your argument was flawed.
Right.
It's not because your vocabulary wasn't impressive enough. It's because the entire physical package that carried your argument, well, it failed on a mechanical level.
Exactly. And that is the core tension we're unpacking today. We walk around with this fundamental illusion about how human communication actually works.
We really do.
We're taught in school and in all these corporate training seminars that business writing is just all about having the best logical proposition.
Like the brain is just a calculator.
Yes. We think the brain is this perfectly rational machine that evaluates the text we provide. But the reality is that human brains process the visual geography of a message long before they process a single syllable of your brilliant prose.
If the physical mechanical layers of your message trigger a defense mechanism in the recipient's brain,
Which happens constantly.
if that happens, your airtight argument never even gets a chance to breathe. The door slams shut before you can even clear your throat to speak.
And that is exactly why we are dissecting the physical anatomy of a sales page today. We're looking at a stack of fascinating source material that focuses entirely on the elements that sit above, around, and outside your main message.
The stuff we usually ignore.
Totally ignore. In this deep dive, you're going to learn about the hidden psychology of the outer envelope, the invisible rules of paragraph spacing, the strategic use of overlines, the really controversial Johnson box.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and even the tactical deployment of visual gimmicks right in the middle of your text.
For anyone listening who is in business or an entrepreneur, or frankly, just anyone whose job requires them to persuade another human being to take a specific action.
Which is pretty much everyone.
Right. Mastering these visual layers is the ultimate shortcut. We are talking about the mechanics of bypassing reader skepticism. It's how you ensure that your highly crafted message actually gets read, remembered, and acted upon, rather than just sent into the void.
It's a completely different way of looking at writing. Because as I was going through these notes, I realized, we have to entirely shift our perspective.
Yes.
We have to stop thinking like authors who want to be admired for our beautiful prose and start thinking like applied psychologists.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. The source material actually refers to this as the art of force communication.
Force communication. It sounds a bit aggressive.
It does sound aggressive, but it simply means the noble art of causing a prospect to perform a positive act as the direct result of reading your words.
Right.
You aren't writing to win a Pulitzer. You are writing to get a response. And to do that, you have to understand the biological and psychological state of the person on the receiving end.
So let's start at the absolute beginning. Because before we can even debate how to format the paragraphs or what kind of clever opening line to use, we have to deal with the container.
The packaging.
Right. You can't read a letter if you don't open the envelope. You can't read an email if you don't click on the subject line in your inbox.
The first impression. The outermost layer. This is the ultimate psychological hurdle, and the mechanics of it apply equally whether we're talking about a physical piece of direct mail sitting in a mailbox or a digital subject line buried in a crowded Gmail inbox.
The barrier to entry is identical.
Exactly identical.
So I was reading through this section on envelopes, and the author hits us with this law. They call it the second rule of envelope copy. And when I first read it, I actually laughed because it sounded so incredibly obvious.
It's deceivingly simple.
It is. The rule is simply that the only purpose of an outer envelope is to get the recipient to open it.
It does sound painfully obvious when you say it out loud, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Of course, the point of the envelope is to get opened.
Right.
But then the text goes on to point out that writers constantly habitually violate this rule. And they violate it because their own ego gets in the way of their common sense.
Let's unpack the psychology of why we make that mistake, because it is a very natural human error. The author describes our current environment as the age of skepticism.
Oh, for sure.
And to really grasp this, I want you to think about your own daily routine. Think about what happens when you wake up in the morning and grab your phone.
Oh, it's a nightmare. I probably have 40 unread emails just from the hours I was sleeping.
Exactly. And what is your mindset when you're staring at those 40 emails? Are you eager to read every single one?
Definitely not.
Are you open-minded and ready to be persuaded by whoever took the time to write to you?
Not at all. I am actively looking for excuses to delete things. My thumb is just hovering over the trash can icon. I'm scanning rapidly, thinking, spam, delete. Newsletter I forgot to subscribe to, delete.
Yeah.
Pitch from a software company, delete. I'm ruthless.
You are ruthless because you have to be. As consumers in the modern world, we are bombarded with thousands of messages, advertisements, and pitches every single day.
Yeah.
We have evolved incredibly thick psychological armor to protect our time and our attention. We are inherently wary. Our shields are up before we even check the mail or refresh our inbox.
So we're essentially in a defensive posture.
Highly defensive. Now, imagine a writer on the other side of that equation. This writer has spent weeks developing a product they truly believe in.
They're excited.
They're so proud of it and they're so eager to make the sale that they decide they need to get their message out as quickly and forcefully as possible. So what do?
They just dump it all out.
Yes. They try to explain their entire pitch on the outside of the envelope, or they cram the entire value proposition right into the email subject line.
They want to make sure you see the benefits immediately.
Right. They put all the features, the logical argument, the pricing discount, all of it right there on the exterior. And what happens when that hits your highly defensive, ruthless morning inbox sweep?
Well, I look at it, and because they've given me the entire pitch, I have all the information I need to make a snap judgment. I evaluate it coldly, decide I don't want to buy software or switch insurance companies today, and I delete it.
Precisely. Because you gave them the bottom line before you ever had a chance to build rapport. The ego of the writer, the desire to show off the product, immediately has to be shoved into a corner.
You have to hold back.
You do. You have to force yourself into the recipient's position. You have to recognize that your target audience doesn't care about your product yet. You haven't earned the right to pitch them.
I found a brilliant example in the source material that perfectly illustrates how to bypass this. It's a case study about a campaign for an environmental long-distance phone company.
I love this example.
It's so good. Now, think about this from the writer's perspective. They have a really noble, complex product. They are a phone company that uses its profits to save forests. They could have easily put a challenging, highly logical claim right on the envelope.
They could have written something like, switch to our long-distance network today and help us fight global warming and corporate greed.
Right. And if I see that in the mail, what happens?
It instantly triggers your skepticism. It demands an intellectual evaluation. Your brain says, do I want to switch phone networks? Sounds like a hassle.
Way too much work.
Yeah. Do I have the mental energy to fight global warming on a Tuesday morning? The answer is usually no, and the envelope goes in the recycling bin.
Exactly. It picks a fight, It asks for too much mental labor up front. But instead, the marketers for this company used this incredibly disarming copy on the outside of the envelope.
Hmm.
It simply said, "Something wonderful is about to happen to your phone line, a long-distance company that helps you save forests just by talking."
Notice how the physiological reaction to those words is completely different.
It is. It doesn't ask you to do math. It doesn't demand that you make a decision about switching networks right then and there. It just creates this warm, curious gap in your knowledge.
Yes.
Something wonderful is about to happen. If I read that, I almost have to open the envelope just to satisfy the curiosity. Like, what is the wonderful thing?
And that is the essence of bypassing the armor. You aren't selling the product on the envelope. You are only selling the act of opening the envelope.
And I do want to pose a scenario here because reading this made me wonder about where the line is drawn.
Okay.
If the absolute only rule is get them to open the envelope by any means necessary, what stops a business from just using outright deception? I mean, I've seen marketers do this.
Oh, all the time.
What if I send you a physical envelope that is marked like urgent W-2 tax document enclosed with a fake IRS logo on it?
Yeah.
But inside, it's a pitch for my accounting software or a coupon for half-off pizza.
Yeah.
Technically, I got you to open it. Didn't I win?
That is a phenomenal question, and it is a trap that a lot of amateur marketers fall into. The source material is very clear on this dynamic. There is a vital, non-negotiable difference between a psychological curiosity gap and a flat-out misrepresentation.
Right.
And it's not just a philosophical difference, it is a matter of pure business survival.
Break that down for me. Why is it business survival?
Because when you misrepresent what is inside the envelope, when you use the fake IRS tax notice tactic, you are initiating a relationship based on a lie. And when you do that, you run a brutal double gauntlet.
A double gauntlet.
First, many of your savvier prospects will see through the charade immediately. They'll recognize the fake watermark, feel insulted that you thought they were stupid enough to fall for it, and throw it in the garbage. You gain nothing.
Right, so it fails on the first pass.
But the second part of the gauntlet is far worse. Let's say you do manage to dupe a tired, stressed out person into opening that envelope.
Right.
They rip it open, their heart rate is elevated because they think they owe the government money, and they pull out your coupon for accounting software.
Oh, man.
You might get one momentary glance at your pitch, but in exchange for that one glance, you have just created an enemy for life.
They will be absolutely livid.
They will despise your brand. They will never do business with you. They will tell their friends never to do business with you. And worse, they will hold a grudge against your legitimate competitors because you've tarred the entire industry with your deceptive brush.
Wow.
Tricking someone into reading your message through a lie is business suicide.
So deception is completely off the table because the backlash destroys the brand.
Completely. But piquing someone's curiosity without lying that is the hallmark of a genuine communications professional.
I see.
You are using psychology to bypass the defense mechanisms by promising a benefit or a revelation that is actually fulfilled inside the package. Look back at the environmental phone company. They didn't lie.
Right, they really were doing that.
Something wonderful was happening to the phone line. The profits really were going to save forests. They just framed that truth in a way that slipped past the reader's natural skepticism.
I was trying to think of a good way to visualize this, and it almost reminds me of, well, imagine you go to a really exclusive nightclub.
Okay, I like where this is going.
There's a bouncer at the door holding the velvet rope. Think of your envelope or your email subject line as that bouncer. The bouncer's only job is to get the right people through the door and into the club. The bouncer does not stand out on the sidewalk with a megaphone, reading the entire history of the DJ who is playing inside. The bouncer doesn't hand out a list of the ingredients in the signature cocktails or try to convince people that the music is at the optimal decibel level.
Because if the bouncer did that, people would just stand on the sidewalk arguing about the music and nobody would actually go inside.
Exactly. The bouncer just looks at you, lifts the velvet rope, and says, "You're going to want to see what's happening in here tonight."
Love that.
The bouncer creates the intrigue, validates that you belong inside, and gets you to step across the threshold. Once you are inside the club, the music, the atmosphere, and the bartender do the selling. Your envelope is the bouncer. Its only job is to get the reader to step inside the letter.
That is a fantastic analogy, and it perfectly sets up the next crucial phase of our deep dive. Because once they step past the bouncer, once they have opened the envelope and unfolded the paper, or clicked the subject line and opened the email on their screen, An entirely new psychological process begins.
Right. They are in the door. Now, what? Because I always assume that once they open it, they just start reading the first word.
Most people assume that.
But the source material points out something fascinating. Before they even process the opening greeting, before their brain even registers the words dear friend or dear executive, their eyes take in the physical formatting of the page,
They take in the geography.
the geography of the page. And if that geography looks hostile, they will turn right back around and walk out of the club before the music even registers.
This brings us to a concept the author calls visual fatigue, and I would argue it is one of the most chronically overlooked aspects of business writing today.
Totally overlooked.
We spend so much time agonizing over the words that we completely forget to look at the shape of the words.
The text gives us some very strict, almost rigid mechanical rules to prevent this visual fatigue. And the first rule is about your opening sentence. The mandate is keep your first sentence exceptionally short.
It seems like a minor stylistic choice, but it is actually a psychological early warning system for the reader.
How so?
Well, when someone opens your letter or your email, their brain makes a split-second subconscious calculation. It scans the layout and asks, is this going to be easy to read, or is this going to be a grueling intellectual slog?
To prove this point, the source compares two different opening sentences. I want to read them to you so you can feel the difference. Option 1 is this winding 46-word sentence.
Preface yourself.
Right. It starts like this. If you'll give me 1.5 minutes of your time, in turn, I'll give you information about an opportunity you probably never thought would be available to someone in your position under these specific market conditions. And it just goes on, weaving clauses together.
Just listening to it is exhausting.
It really is.
Imagine looking at that as a dense block of text right at the top of a page. Your brain immediately signals that this person is going to be difficult to understand and that reading this letter will require significant cognitive effort.
Option 2, on the other hand, is simply this, I want 1.5 minutes of your time.
Boom. It's punchy.
Yeah.
It's visually small. It is incredibly easy to digest.
It signals to the reader's brain, hey, this person respects my time. This is not going to require massive intellectual effort to decode. I can handle this.
And it creates momentum. Once they read that short, snappy first sentence, they are already moving down the page. The friction has been removed.
But the rules for the page layout don't stop at the first sentence. The text gives us this incredible mandate regarding paragraphs. It says never write a paragraph longer than 7 lines.
Never.
I can practically hear the college English majors screaming in the background right now.
Oh, they hate this rule.
I know my high school English teacher would have failed me for this. The immediate pushback is, well, what if a paragraph has to be longer than 7 lines to fully complete the thought? What if the argument is complex?
Right.
And the author's response to that is ruthlessly pragmatic. He basically says, I don't care, hit the period key and hit the enter key.
He says, type a period and start a new paragraph. No paragraph has to be longer than 7 lines. And what's vital to understand here is the underlying neuroscience of reading.
Yeah, let's dig into that. Why 7 lines? Why not 10 lines?
It has to do with how the human eye tracks across a page. When we read, our eyes don't move in a smooth, continuous glide. They move in tiny, rapid jumps called saccades.
Saccades.
Right, fixing on words and then jumping forward.
Yeah.
This requires micromuscular effort and cognitive focus. When the brain sees a massive, unbroken block of text, it intuitively calculates the sheer amount of ocular tracking required to get through it without a resting point.
It sees no breaks, no places to catch its breath.
Exactly. The text describes this as a page having an overall gray look.
A gray look.
Yeah. If the space between paragraphs is identical to the space within the paragraphs, or if the paragraphs themselves are huge, dense blocks, the page literally looks gray from a distance. The contrast between the dark ink and the white paper is lost.
Ah, I see.
And when the brain perceives that gray wall, it instantly registers it as hard work. The cognitive load of figuring out how to navigate the text overwhelms the desire to read it.
I was trying to picture this overall gray look, and I realized it's the exact same feeling I get when I look at a poorly plated meal. Have you ever been to a really old-school steakhouse?
I have.
Imagine you go to this fancy steakhouse, and you order their signature 30-ounce tomahawk steak.
Okay, making me hungry.
It is objectively the greatest piece of meat in the world. It's cooked to absolute perfection. But the waiter brings it out on a tiny plate, sets it in front of you whole, and walks away without giving you a steak knife.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Right. Even though the food is theoretically amazing, you are exhausted just looking at it. You think, how am I supposed to eat this? Do I just gnaw on it? Do I have to tear it apart with my hands?
Just face first into the steak?
Yeah. The sheer logistical friction of consuming it ruins your appetite. You don't even want to start.
That is exactly what a massive 15-line paragraph does to a reader.
But if that same chef takes that exact same 30-ounce steak in the kitchen, slices it into perfect, bite-sized medallions, and arranges them beautifully on a large plate with plenty of space between each piece, suddenly you're salivating.
You don't have to work for it.
You just pick up your fork and go. You don't have to think about how to eat it, you just enjoy the flavor. Break the text into chewable bites.
That is a phenomenal way to understand it. Hitting the enter key is providing the steak knife for your reader.
I love that.
You are doing the logistical work for them. The author takes this even further with specific formatting advice. He suggests single spacing the lines within the letter, but double spacing between the paragraphs.
To create white space.
Yes. White space is cognitive lubrication. It creates air on the page. It gives the eye a resting point every few lines. When you combine a short opening sentence with paragraphs that never exceed 7 lines, and you separate those paragraphs with double-spaced white air, you create a visual slide.
A visual slide.
The reader is pulled effortlessly down the page. They don't feel like they are reading. They feel like they are gliding.
And what's so powerful about this is that it doesn't require you to change your brilliant argument.
Yeah.
You don't have to dumb down your vocabulary or compromise your core message. You are just changing the physical layout so the reader's brain doesn't panic and shut down before you make your point.
Connecting this back to the grand theme of forced communication, every single one of these mechanical rules is designed entirely to remove friction.
Right.
You want the physical act of reading to become invisible. If they are struggling to track the lines, they are thinking about the layout. If the layout is effortless, their entire intellectual focus remains on your persuasive message.
Okay, so the bouncer let them in. The page looks inviting. We slice the steak into beautiful medallions. Now we need to talk about what they actually read first.
Huh?
Because as I was studying this section, I realized that the first thing they read often isn't the greeting. It's not, "Dear Reader" or "Dear John."
No, especially in direct mail or highly structured business letters, the eye goes to the text sitting at the very top of the page, above the salutation.
The overline.
The overline.
This section of the text introduces the first law of overlines, and I have to admit, it completely contradicted everything I was taught in business school.
I'm not surprised.
I want to explore this because it feels like a massive trap that so many modern businesses fall into. The law states, do not synopsize the offer before the reader is conditioned to accept the premise.
This is a crucial pivot point. This is where we see a direct, high-speed collision between the psychology of direct response marketing and the traditions of standard corporate communication.
Because the standard corporate mindset is all about BLUF, right? Bottom line up front. We're taught that executives are busy, so you need to summarize the entire offer right at the top so they know exactly what the email or the letter is about before they commit to reading it.
That is exactly what they teach you. Give the executive summary. But in forced communication, doing that at the very top of a persuasive message is often a fatal error.
Why? If they are busy, why wouldn't they want the summary?
Because you are asking them to evaluate a logical proposition before you have established any emotional rapport or provided any context for value.
The source gives us a brilliant side-by-side comparison to illustrate why this fails, and I think it perfectly highlights the difference between intellect and emotion.
Let's hear it.
Let's say you are a marketer selling auto insurance. You want to use an overline. A bad overline one that follows the corporate rule of synopsizing the offer too early would be something like, save 20% on your automobile insurance.
Now, let's slow down and analyze what actually happens in the recipient's mind when their eyes hit that phrase. Save 20% on your automobile insurance. This is a mathematical synopsis. It is a logical proposition.
Right. It's fact.
But look at the sheer amount of mental labor it demands. It asks the reader to do math instantly. Their brain has to pause and think, okay, what is my current insurance premium? Let me pull that number up from memory.
Ugh, hate doing that.
Right. Now, let me calculate what 20% of that number is. Okay, that's X amount of dollars. Now, let me coldly evaluate whether saving X amount of dollars is worth the massive, agonizing hassle of calling my current provider, canceling my policy, and filling out new paperwork with this new company.
That is an overwhelming amount of work to ask of someone who just opened an envelope 3 seconds ago.
It is entirely intellectual, and they are doing all of this calculating and evaluating before you have even said hello, let alone explained why your company is better or more trustworthy. In a battle between intellect and emotion at the top of a page, if you trigger the intellect first, you will lose the reader. The intellect will always find a reason to say no.
So we have to bypass the math.
Mhm.
What is the alternative? The source says instead of save 20% on your automobile insurance, the good overline should be put an extra $100 a year in your pocket.
Look at the profound difference in how that feels.
It's completely different.
Put an extra $100 in your pocket is visceral. It is a specific, tangible, emotional benefit. You do not have to do any complex mental algebra to understand what a $100 bill feels like.
Right.
You don't have to recall your current premiums. It instantly paints a picture in your mind of having more cash. It hooks the emotion of gain.
And it creates curiosity. How am I going to put an extra $100 in my pocket? I better read the next line to find out.
Exactly. The text emphasizes this repeatedly. Specifics outpull generalizations every single time.
I can see how this applies to almost any industry, not just insurance. If I'm selling a software tool that makes an accounting team more efficient, the bad corporate overline would be increase your department's efficiency by 15%.
Which is math. It's abstract.
But the good overline would be let your accounting team go home at 5 p.m. on a Friday.
Yes, because that is the visceral emotional benefit of the efficiency. The goal of the overline is not to serve as a legally binding document or a dry executive summary. The goal is to tease a massive, highly specific benefit that conditions the reader's emotional state.
Condition the emotional state.
You want them to want what you are about to offer before you even explain the logistics of how it works.
The text also brings up a fascinating visual tactic for these overlines, which is the use of handwriting. It mentions that handwritten overlines are unequal attention getters. And I can intuitively feel why that's true.
Oh, they are powerful.
When you get a printed corporate letter and there is blue ink scrawled across the top, it instantly breaks the corporate facade. It feels deeply human.
It creates a massive pattern interrupt. In a sea of perfectly aligned mechanical typography, a handwritten note signals extreme importance. It implies urgency, as if the sender was reviewing the final printed letter, realized there was one crucial final thought they absolutely had to share with you, and literally grabbed a blue pen at the last second to write it in the margin.
It feels personal, almost intimate.
It does, but the author attaches a huge red flag to this tactic, and it ties directly back to what we just discussed about visual fatigue.
Right.
The warning is this. If you need 5 handwritten lines, warning flags should go up. That's too long for handwriting type it.
So you can't just handwrite a whole paragraph.
No, because then it loses its power and becomes a liability. A few words of blue handwriting look urgent and highly personal, but a massive, dense block of handwriting looks like the frantic scribblings of a madman.
Like a ransom note or something.
Right. It becomes incredibly difficult to read. The eye strains to decode the cursive, the cognitive load spikes, and the reader simply gives up.
So the practical takeaway for managing the top of your page is a delicate balance. You want to tease a massive specific benefit that hooks the reader's emotions. You absolutely must not give away the logistical, mathematical punchline of your pitch. And visually, you need to keep it concise enough that it doesn't trigger visual fatigue.
Which leads us perfectly into one of the most controversial visual elements you can possibly place at the top of a page.
More to go.
If an overline is a quick tease, what happens when we go to the extreme opposite end of the spectrum?
Yes. The Johnson box.
The infamous Johnson box.
I found this section absolutely fascinating because it deals with managing risk. So for the listener who might not be familiar with direct marketing terminology, what exactly is a Johnson box?
Well, it is named after its pioneer, a very successful direct mail copywriter named Frank Johnson. Mechanically, it is exactly what it sounds like. It is literally a boxed-off section of text, often outlined with asterisks, or a thick border that sits right at the top of the page before the greeting. And inside this box is a highly concentrated summary of the core offer and the main benefits of the entire letter.
Now, based on everything we literally just talked about regarding overlines, how we shouldn't synopsize the offer, how we shouldn't give away the punchline before building rapport, putting a massive summary box at the top of the page feels like it breaks every rule we just established.
It does break the rule. And that is why the expert analysis in the text treats the Johnson box as the ultimate double-edged sword. It is a highly calculated risk.
Right.
Depending on your specific audience and your specific offer, a Johnson box can either multiply your conversion rate or completely tank your campaign.
Let's explore why that is, because the author breaks down the psychology of the two different types of readers who might open your letter.
Let's look at the first type. We'll call them the casual skimmer.
I know this person well. I am often this person.
We all are. This is the person who opens the envelope, unfolds the page, gives the overall layout a half-second visual scan, and is fully prepared to throw it in the recycling bin. They do not have the patience or the attention span to read a beautifully crafted, slow-burn, emotional opening paragraph. If they don't see something instantly compelling, they are gone.
Okay, so what happens when the skimmer sees a Johnson box?
The Johnson box is a visual magnet for the skimmer. Because it is boxed off and visually distinct from the rest of the text, their eye goes straight to it. They read the summary inside the box, and if the summary highlights a benefit that hits their specific pain point, they get intrigued.
Oh, I see.
Suddenly, their attention is captured, and they are pulled down into the main text of the letter to learn more. In this scenario, the Johnson box just saved a sale that otherwise would have been lost in the trash.
That makes perfect sense. The skimmer needs the bottom line up front, or they walk away. The box gives it to them. That's the pro. But what is the con? Who is the second type of reader?
The second type is the analytical reader. This is the person who would have read your letter the way you intended it to be read.
The ideal reader.
The ideal reader. They would have started at the top, read the short opening sentence, glided through your double-spaced, chewable paragraphs, and followed your logical step-by-step argument. They would have allowed you to slowly build rapport, identify their underlying problems, and present your solution as the inevitable answer.
They would have let me court them.
Yes, they would have been convinced by the journey. But what happens when the analytical reader opens the letter and the very first thing they see is a Johnson box?
The box ruins the buildup.
It completely destroys the buildup. It strips away all the careful psychological pacing and presents the raw, naked pitch before any emotional rapport has been established. The analytical reader looks at the box, sees the cold, hard pitch, decides, I'm not interested in buying this right now, and tosses the letter in the wastebasket unread.
Oh, wow.
The Johnson box just cost you a sale you absolutely would have made if you would just let the letter do its work.
I love how you phrased that earlier when we were prepping for this. You said it's like going on a first date, and before you even sit down, before you say hello, before you order a drink or ask about their day, you just slide a legally binding marriage contract across the table.
Exactly. You skipped the entire courtship, you asked for the ultimate commitment before you even proved you were a good company, and the natural human reaction to that is recoil.
So this presents a massive dilemma. If a Johnson box saves the skimmer, but alienates the analytical reader, how do we know when to use it? Do we just flip a coin? Should we ban them entirely for high-stakes business writing?
You definitely shouldn't ban them, but you must deploy them with immense strategic intent. The rule the author provides is actually quite elegant. You only use a Johnson box or its digital equivalent, an executive summary at the top of an email, when your underlying offer is implicitly so attractive that simply announcing it is your absolute best salesmanship.
Give me an example of that.
Yeah.
What kind of offer is so good it doesn't need a warm-up?
If you are selling solid gold bars at a 50% discount to the market price, you do not need to build rapport. You don't need a slow, emotional buildup explaining the history of currency and the value of precious metals.
No, you definitely don't.
You just need to announce the sheer, undeniable fact of the discount loudly and clearly in a box at the top of the page. The raw facts are so overwhelmingly good that the offer sells itself.
The facts are the persuasion.
Precisely. In that case, the Johnson box works perfectly. But if your offer requires persuasion, if you are selling a complex service, if you need to educate the reader about a problem they didn't know they had, if you have to shift their perspective, or if you need to justify a premium price tag, you must leave the box out.
Leave it out entirely.
If your offer requires a narrative, protect your narrative buildup at all costs. Let your carefully crafted letter do the heavy lifting.
That is such a powerful distinction to keep in mind. If the facts are undeniable, put them in a box. If the facts require context, hide them in the story.
Exactly. Which brings us to the next crucial phase of the reader's journey. Let's assume you've navigated all these hurdles successfully. We've mastered the bouncer at the envelope. We've set up the visual geography with short sentences and chewable paragraphs. We've tactically managed the top of the page with either an emotional overline or a strategic Johnson box.
Right, so the reader is hooked. They are moving down the page. They are now deep inside the main body of your letter.
They are in the middle of the text. And this is where a completely new problem arises. Because reading, by its very nature, is a solitary, quiet, internal activity. And unless your prose is literally Stephen King level gripping, it is incredibly easy for a reader's mind to wander.
So true.
It is very easy for them to simply zone out halfway through page 2.
The text addresses this mid-letter fatigue by introducing a concept called artificial excitement.
Artificial excitement.
I have to say, I kind of love that term. It sounds almost scandalous, like a cheap parlor trick.
It does have a slightly scandalous ring to it, but in the context of forced communication, it refers to mechanical and visual artifices that are injected directly into the body copy to break up the monotony of the text.
Okay, what does that look like?
Their sole purpose is to violently force the reader's attention back to the message. We are talking about heavy handwriting in the margins, pointing to specific paragraphs, rubber stamps that look like they were literally slammed onto the paper in red ink, things like free gifts or no contest, and provocative, unexpected subheadings.
The source material gives this amazing, almost surreal example of a historical build-up technique used right in the middle of a sales letter. It uses the phrase, "You are there," to jolt the reader.
Walk us through how that works in practice.
Okay, so imagine you are reading a letter. It's a fairly standard pitch for a magazine subscription. You're reading along, maybe your eyes are starting to glaze over a bit, and suddenly, right in the middle of the page, there's a bold, indented section that says, "You are there." Damn the torpedoes. Full speed ahead.
And that'll wake you up.
Right. Or it drops you instantly into the middle of a story about a military unit dismantling 50 miles of railroad and telegraph lines in Mississippi during the Civil War.
As a reader, experiencing that is incredibly jarring.
It is completely jarring, and that's what makes it so effective. It is deeply provocative, but it does not betray what is actually going on in the letter. It creates this massive, gaping hole in the reader's understanding. They experience profound cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Your brain says, wait a minute, why am I suddenly dismantling a railroad in Mississippi? What on earth does this have to do with the magazine subscription you're trying to sell me?
And how do they resolve that cognitive dissonance?
The only way to resolve it is to keep reading. They are forced to push forward in the next paragraph just to satisfy their own burning curiosity and figure out how the writer's going to connect the Civil War to the magazine.
It forces momentum. I think about these visual disruptors, the heavy handwriting, the red rubber stamps, the bold exclamations as a solution to highway hypnosis.
Yes. I was actually thinking of a very similar analogy when I read this.
Yeah.
I equate them to speed bumps in a long, quiet suburban neighborhood.
Exactly. Imagine you are driving down a long, straight, perfectly paved road. There are identical houses on either side, identical manicured lawns. Everything is smooth. What happens?
You zone out.
You zone out, your brain goes on autopilot, you stop paying attention to your environment because there is no friction. But if the city installs a speed bump right in the middle of that smooth road, what happens?
It physically jolts you.
It jolts the car, you wake up, you have to press the brake, grip the steering wheel, and actively re-engage with your surroundings. Heavy handwriting in the middle of a typed letter or a sudden dramatic historical quote is a visual speed bump. It jolts the reader's brain out of autopilot and says, wake up, pay attention to this specific part.
I love the speed bump analogy because it perfectly captures the utility of it. But it also brings us to the massive elephant in the room regarding these techniques. And the author is brave enough to explicitly ask the question in the text, are gimmicks good?
And what is the author's ultimate verdict? Because I know for a fact that there are thousands of highly trained copywriters, graphic designers, and corporate brand managers who would look at a red rubber stamp that says free gifts and absolutely cringe.
Oh, they would hate it. They would despise it.
You would say it looks cheap. They would say it degrades the brand. They want an elegant, minimalist design. They want pure, beautiful prose. They want to win design awards for their pristine corporate aesthetics.
But the author points out a harsh reality that I think a lot of creatives struggle to accept. We aren't keeping score by literary awards or design awards, are we?
No. In the world of forced communication, we are keeping score by responses. That is the only metric that dictates survival. If you send out a beautifully minimalist, perfectly elegant letter and nobody buys your product, you failed.
Completely failed.
It doesn't matter how pretty it looked, it failed its primary function. On the other hand, if you send out a letter with a bright red rubber stamp, heavy blue handwriting in the margins, and an over-the-top Johnson box, and it breaks company sales records, you succeeded.
So the expert conclusion from the text is that artifices, these stickers, scratch-offs, heavy handwriting, rubber stamps, They are absolutely good. If F, they increase the response rate.
Precisely. The author's message is essentially, don't be too proud to use visual disruptors. Don't let your desire to look elegant get in the way of being effective.
Right.
The text explicitly states that sameness equals boredom. If your letter looks exactly like every other piece of polished, boring corporate correspondence the reader receives in their stack of mail, it will be treated exactly like every other piece of corporate correspondence. It will be ignored.
You have to break the pattern.
You must break up the formatting to inject visual excitement. The only caveat is that the excitement must drive the reader forward toward taking a positive action. You don't use a rubber stamp just to be chaotic. You use it to highlight the most compelling benefit of your offer right when their attention starts to flag.
It's all about guiding the reader's energy, managing their attention span like a precious resource.
It is. And as we pull all of these disparate ideas together, from the psychology of the envelope to the formatting of the paragraphs and the strategic deployment of these visual gimmicks, we really arrive at the true soul of this chapter. And frankly, it's the core philosophy of effective modern communication.
Let's synthesize this for everyone listening. If they're going to take one massive paradigm shift away from this deep dive to apply to their next pitch, what is the grand takeaway?
The grand takeaway is that in persuasion, form is function. We have all been conditioned by years of schooling to think of writing as a purely intellectual exercise. We think it's just about the vocabulary we choose and the logical arguments we build.
But that's just a fraction of it.
Exactly. Human beings are physical, visual, emotional, and highly skeptical creatures. Every single mechanical element we've discussed today, the mysterious envelope that acts as a bouncer, the teasing overline that hooks the emotion rather than the intellect, the chewable double-spaced paragraphs that prevent cognitive fatigue, the high-risk Johnson box, and the rubber stamp gimmicks that jolt the reader awake, every single one of these is a calculated exercise in applied psychology.
You are literally visually maneuvering the reader's state of mind.
Exactly. You are shaping their emotional and psychological state before they even have a chance to intellectually process your arguments. If you master this visual geography, you dismantle their natural skepticism, you preserve their cognitive energy, and you guide them effortlessly down the page to the exact conclusion you want them to reach.
It makes me think of building a water slide.
A water slide.
Yeah. Think about it. If you build a water slide and the plastic is dry, flat, and jagged, it doesn't matter how amazing the pool at the bottom is.
Okay, I'm with you.
The ride is going to be painful, there's way too much friction, and nobody's going to go down. The brilliant argument is the pool at the bottom.
I see.
But if you lubricate the slide with white space, and you add the twists and turns of visual excitement with handwriting and formatting, you remove all the friction. Once they sit down at the top of the slide, once they read that short opening sentence, gravity just takes over. They can't help but end up exactly where you want them.
And because you remove the friction, they will actually enjoy the ride. They will feel like arriving at your conclusion was their own idea.
This has been absolutely eye-opening. We've completely deconstructed the anatomy of the page. We've mastered the outside layer, the top of the page, and the visual speed bumps in the middle. But there is one massive piece of the puzzle missing.
Oh, there certainly is.
What happens at the very end of the page? Next time, we'll dive into the hidden, highly disproportionate power lurking at the absolute bottom of the letter, the PS, and we'll uncover the exact words you actually need to start your message. Because as we've learned today, if the visual geography fails, your brilliant argument never even gets a chance.
What if the absolute, most critical part of your next major pitch or your email or, I don't know, a sales letter is the part you write as a complete afterthought?
Right, the part you basically just throw in at the last second.
Exactly, because you know the drill. You spend hours, maybe even days, agonizing over the middle of your argument. You tweak the bullet points, you polish the transition sentences, you make sure the data visualization looks flawless.
Oh yeah, we've all been there. Staring at paragraph 3 for an hour.
Right. But human psychology actually dictates that people are going to judge you almost entirely on the outer packaging. I mean, they are looking at the envelope, the opening hook, and the very last line.
Which is wild when you think about where we actually put our effort.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because if we're putting all our energy into the center of the maze, well, we might be completely ignoring how the reader actually walks through the door in the first place.
We are absolutely ignoring it, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why today's deep dive is going to completely invert how we look at persuasive writing.
I'm ready for it.
So we are pulling directly from this massive stack of classic direct response marketing manuals I have here on my desk. Specifically, we're focusing on chapter 4, which is titled, What's at the End?
And this covers pages 120 through 137 of our source material, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this chapter, it basically breaks down the hidden scientific anatomy of getting a reader to actually take action.
So it's not just theory, it's about getting a result.
Right. We'll be looking at the surprising power of the postscript, the PS, and then the psychology of the outer envelope, and the mechanics of the perfect opening hook.
It's all the edges of the letter, the bookends.
Precisely. And whether you are an entrepreneur trying to close a major sale, or honestly, just someone trying to get your boss to read a critical proposal without just skimming it, mastering these bookends of communication is the ultimate shortcut to getting a definitive yes.
It's just so counterintuitive, though. I mean, we're taught in school to build a logical sequential argument, right? Introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion.
You lay the bricks one by one.
Yeah, exactly. But the real world of forced communication, where you actually need someone to pull out a credit card or sign a document or change a deeply held belief, it just doesn't work like a middle school essay.
No, it really doesn't. And I think the best place to start seeing this disconnect is by looking at the very end of the message, the PS.
Which is funny because I always thought of a PS as a mistake.
Like you forgot something.
Yeah. Growing up, a PS meant, oops, I forgot to mention I'm bringing potato salad to the barbecue. Let me just tack it on at the bottom here.
Right.
But the data from these direct response manuals suggests it is actually a massive calculated weapon.
Oh, it is. It is arguably the second most read part of any letter or email.
Wait, the second most read out of the whole thing?
Yep, right after the headline or the subject line. And to understand why, we really have to look at the cognitive mechanics of how people read.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, in an era of information overload, and this was true even in the golden age of analog direct mail, everyone is skip reading.
Guilty as charged. I definitely just scan emails.
You all do it. The human eye operates in a Z pattern or an F pattern when scanning a page. We look at the top, we scan down the left side, and our eyes naturally seek the conclusion.
Right, because we want to know the bottom line to decide if the middle is actually worth our cognitive effort.
Exactly. We're trying to save mental energy. So when a reader scans down a page, the PS acts as this visual and psychological anchor.
That makes so much sense. It stands out visually from the block of text.
It does. And what's fascinating here is how this actually plays out in rigorous, real-world A/B testing. The source material highlights this incredibly famous example involving St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Oh, I read through that case study and the numbers are just staggering.
They really are. Do you want to break down the setup for that one?
Yeah, so St. Jude was running this massive direct mail fundraising campaign, and it featured Danny Thomas, their founder. And in direct mail, every single variable costs money. Printing, postage, all of it. So they test absolutely everything.
Right. They can't afford to guess.
Exactly. So they took the exact same letter, word for word. I mean, the same emotional appeal, the same formatting, the same call to action.
Total control environment.
Yep. And they tested it two ways. One version without a postscript and one version with a postscript added at the very bottom.
Just that one change.
Just that one change. And the letter that included the PS pulled an astonishing 19% higher response rate.
19%? I mean, that is huge.
It's massive. Just to put that in perspective for anyone listening, in the world of direct response marketing, a fraction of a percent can mean the difference between a campaign succeeding or completely failing.
Oh, absolutely. People pop champagne over a 0.5% bump.
Right. So if a campaign is pulling, say, a 2% conversion rate, pushing it to 2.2% is a massive win. A 19% bump just from adding a few lines at the end of a page is a seismic shift.
It's the kind of anomaly that makes marketers question literally everything they know.
So it forces us to ask why. I mean, why does the brain react that way? If the information was already in the body of the letter and the letter itself was deeply compelling, why does putting something in a PS suddenly trigger 19% more people to write a check?
It really comes down to perceived spontaneity and, well, credibility.
Spontaneity, like it wasn't planned.
Exactly. Think about it. A well-crafted body paragraph feels polished. It feels like a copywriter labored over it in a boardroom for weeks.
It feels corporate.
Right. But a PS, it feels like a spontaneous afterthought. It mimics a one-on-one personal communication.
Oh, I see. Like when you write a quick note to a friend.
Yeah. When you write a note to a friend and add a PS, it's usually the most urgent, emotionally resonant, or intimate thought you had right before you sealed the envelope.
It's the thing you couldn't bear to leave out.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so the reader subconsciously grants the PS higher credibility and a much greater sense of urgency than the highly polished text sitting right above it.
Okay, it's like the dessert menu at a high-end restaurant.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, if the chef just throws some leftover fruit in a bowl as a literal afterthought, it completely ruins the meal. The customer leaves feeling neglected.
Yeah, that's a terrible way to end a $500 dinner.
Right, but if the dessert is designed to look effortless, maybe it's this rustic, deconstructed tart, while actually being the most decadent, meticulously planned part of the whole experience, it leaves a lasting impression.
You walk away talking about the tart, not the steak.
Exactly. The effortless look is totally manufactured to make you feel a certain way.
That analogy tracks perfectly with the mechanics of persuasion. The PS is that final taste left in the reader's mouth. But, we really have to be careful with how we apply this.
Because it can backfire.
Oh, absolutely.
Eh.
It is not some invariable law that every single communication must have a PS.
I was actually going to ask about that, because sometimes I'll get a letter from a bank or an insurance company, and the PS just looks like cheap bulk mail formatting.
Yes. It screams mass marketing template.
Right. You can almost see the mail merge brackets where they inserted my name. P.S. Dear first name, don't forget to renew.
It's so cringy.
If the P.S. is supposed to mimic personal intimacy, a bad one does the exact opposite. It shatters the illusion completely.
And the source material is very clear on this rule. If the PS makes your letter look like an impersonal mass mailing, cut it immediately.
Just ditch it.
Just ditch it. If you look at your draft and the postscript strips away that personalized, conversational feel you've carefully built up in the body text, eliminate the PS formatting entirely.
So what do you do with that information then?
You simply move that core message up to become the final paragraph of the main text. The tool should never undermine the tone.
So it's a strategic choice, not a mandatory template.
Exactly.
But if we are going to use it and we want to harness that St. Jude 19% bump, what actually goes in there? I mean, you don't want to use your PS to explain the logistics of your shipping policy?
Definitely not. You should always use the PS to reinforce your absolute strongest motivator.
Which are what, usually?
In persuasion, those motivators are the primal drivers: greed, exclusivity, fear of missing out, or extreme urgency.
Anymore hurts.
Basically, yeah. Alternatively, you can use it to introduce a standalone extra benefit that requires zero explanation. The sources actually call these public domain postscripts.
Okay, what does a public domain postscript look like in practice?
The text gives a great example. It suggests something like, if you want this special private discount, be sure to mail the card within 10 days. I'd hate to see you miss out.
Wow, notice how dense that is.
It packs a punch.
It really does. 10 days hits the urgency trigger. Special private discount hits exclusivity and greed.
And I'd hate to see you miss out.
That hits loss aversion right on the head. It's doing all of that in a single breath without introducing any new complicated concepts.
Right. You aren't explaining how the product works in the PS. You're just hitting the emotional trigger one last time before they put the paper down.
It acts as that final nudge over the edge of the cliff.
Exactly. It's the push.
But, knowing human nature, and especially knowing marketers, if one PS increases response by 19%, some clever executive out there definitely thought, hey, let's put 2 postscripts.
Oh, they did.
Let's do a PS and then a PPS and maybe even a PPPS just to really hammer the point home. If one dessert is good, 3 desserts must be better.
Which brings us to a really foundational law of forced communication. It's a mathematical concept the text calls E squared equals 0.
E squared equals 0. Okay, unpack that math for me.
The formula represents this reality. When you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing.
Right. If the whole page is highlighted, nothing is highlighted.
Exactly. And the concept of the PPS is a perfect illustration of this trap. Instead of doubling the psychological power of the end of your letter, a PPS actually signals deep insecurity to the reader.
It screams, I know I haven't done a strong enough selling job in the last 4 pages, so please, please look at this one last thing.
Yes, it completely kills the momentum.
It makes me think of that awkward guest at a dinner party.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this.
You know the one. They announce they have to leave. They say their goodbyes. They put their coat on. They walk to the front door.
And then they just stop.
Yeah. They linger in the doorway with the door wide open, letting the cold air in, and they just start talking for another 20 minutes about something completely unrelated.
It's agonizing.
The crisp, memorable exit you had planned is ruined. Everyone is just standing there, shifting their weight, just wanting it to end. That's what a PPS feels like to a reader. It destroys the pacing.
I really don't think there's a better way to visualize the emotional decay of a PPS than that lingering dinner guest. You are holding the door open, and the warmth of the interaction is literally escaping into the night.
It's brutal.
It is. And we can see this in action through an analysis of a classic Anthony Robbins personal power upgrade letter that's detailed in the sources.
Oh, Tony Robbins, he's the king of direct response.
He really is. But this letter is a fascinating case study in visual and emotional clutter.
Too many dinner guests at the door.
Way too many. This particular mailing utilized massive, shouting text. It had handwritten marginal notes, scrawled in blue ink, huge rubber stamps screaming, $100 certificate, a PS, and an enclosed lift note.
Okay, wait, let's define a lift note for the listener really quick, because that's a very specific piece of direct mail architecture that definitely has digital equivalents today.
Good call.
Yeah.
So a lift note is a separate, smaller piece of paper or a secondary letter enclosed in the same mailing envelope.
And it's designed to literally lift the response rate, right?
Exactly. Usually by offering a different perspective or a final push. So you might have the main letter from the publisher of a magazine, and then a smaller note enclosed that is supposedly written directly from the editor-in-chief.
Or maybe a testimonial from a famous customer.
Right. It's a second voice in the envelope. And the absolute rule of lift notes is this. If you include one, you never, ever put a PS on both the main letter and the lift note.
Because then you have two people lingering at the front door, both refusing to leave.
Exactly. You are splitting the reader's attention and diluting the urgency completely.
It's just too much noise.
It creates total cognitive overload. Furthermore, the typography on the lift note must be completely different from the main letter.
Why is that? Just to make it stand out.
To make it feel authentic. If the main letter is in a standard authoritative serif font on crisp white paper, the lift note should look physically distinct.
Oh, like it actually came from someone else's desk.
Yes. Maybe it's a different typeface, maybe it's on slightly smaller colored paper or formatted to look like a personal memo typed on a typewriter. They need to feel like distinct, purposeful communications from different entities.
That makes sense.
But when you slap a PS on the main letter and a PS on the lift note and you format them identically, well, the illusion of intimacy is totally broken.
It doesn't look like an urgent, personalized message anymore. It looks like desperate manufactured clutter.
Exactly. E squared equals 0.
So we've established that the ending, the PS, is this incredibly high-value real estate. We know it gets read right after the opening. We know we shouldn't dilute it by adding a PPS or slapping it on every single enclosure.
Right.
But here's the harsh reality. We can craft the most psychologically compelling, perfectly paced PS in the world, and none of that matters if the recipient throws the letter in the trash without ever actually opening it.
Which happens all the time.
Right. The dessert doesn't matter if they don't walk through the front door of the restaurant. And in today's digital world, it's the equivalent of just swiping left and deleting the email without even opening it.
The dreaded swipe.
So we have to reverse engineer the first impression. We have to master the envelope.
The envelope is the gateway to persuasion. And there's a fundamental rule here that communicators violate on a daily basis.
Lay it on us.
The source material refers to it as the second rule of envelope copy. The only purpose of the outer envelope is to get the recipient to open it.
Wait, that's it?
That is its entirely singular function. Its purpose is not to explain the offer.
Yeah.
Its purpose is not to sell the product. Its sole function is to facilitate the opening of the package.
That sounds so incredibly simple, but people want to cram their entire value proposition onto the outside of the envelope or into the subject line of an email.
Oh, confidently.
They treat the envelope like a billboard on the highway. They just try to do way too much.
And when you try to do too much, you instantly trigger the recipient's defense mechanisms.
Because we're all so guarded against being sold to.
Exactly. The brain is remarkably efficient at categorizing information as threat, junk, or value. Let's look at the tragic misuse of the word important.
Oh boy, the all caps important.
Yes. The sources highlight a mundane subscription renewal notice for a magazine that arrived in an envelope screaming in bold red letters, "Important, subscription notice enclosed."
I feel my blood pressure rising just hearing that.
Right, because how does that make you feel?
I look at that, I realize it's just a magazine asking for my money, and I immediately feel annoyed. You've hijacked my attention under false pretenses.
Because to the recipient, a magazine subscription notice is not important.
No, it might be important to the publisher's bottom line, but it holds zero urgency for me, the reader.
Exactly. The sender has squandered their credibility before the letter is even read. They lied to you.
So what's the right way to do it?
Well, contrast that with another example from the text. It's an envelope from the Lowe's Corporation that features a simple, understated rubber stamp reading. Important. Employee materials.
Oh, wow. Now that actually is important.
Right.
If I'm an employee, I need to see those materials. It might be my W-2. It might be changes to my health insurance. The outside of the envelope sets a credible expectation that is immediately validated when I open it.
You open it, you see your W-2, and you think, okay, that was important. Trust is maintained.
But how do you handle it when you aren't sending W-2s? I mean, what if you are trying to sell something or you are dealing with a cold prospect who has absolutely no relationship with you? How do you get them to open it without resorting to the boy who cried wolf?
This is where the fourth rule of envelope copy comes into play, and it's brilliant. When dealing with controversy, or when you are uncertain of the recipient's prejudices, asking a question on the envelope is far less likely to generate antagonism than making a flat statement.
A question. Okay, why a question?
Questions are an incredibly underrated psychological weapon. In psychology, there's something called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah. It dictates that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. A question creates an open loop in the brain.
Ah, and the brain hates open loops.
It despises them. It bypasses the reader's critical filters because the brain naturally just wants to resolve the question.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. And I have to push back a little on this because I see this online all the time.
Go for it.
Isn't this just the analog version of clickbait? We see subject lines that say, "Did you see what happened?" Or, "You won't believe this one weird trick."
Right, the classic clickbait.
Yeah. And if I get a letter that asks a vague, provocative question on the envelope, part of me feels like I'm being manipulated. How do we draw the line between effectively managing attention and just flat out deceiving someone to get an open rate? Aren't we burning trust?
That is the most common and honestly the most vital objection to this tactic.
Good, so the authors address it.
They do. The source material passionately defends the use of curiosity, but it does so by strictly citing what it calls the clarity commandment.
The clarity commandment. I like the sound of that.
It's essential. It is absolutely not trickery if, and only if, the enclosure backs up the promise made on the envelope.
Okay, so you have to deliver the goods.
Exactly. The goal isn't deception. The goal is honoring the reader's time by cutting through their apathy. You are in a battle for attention against 1,000 other stimuli.
Right, their phone is buzzing, the dog is barking.
So if you ask a provocative question on the envelope, and the letter inside actually answers that question with genuine, relevant value, you haven't tricked them. You've successfully managed their attention.
Okay, I see the distinction. So if the envelope says, "Is your retirement safe?" and I open it, and it's a letter selling me, I don't know, a blender, I'm furious.
You would be enraged. You'd throw it away.
Because you lied to me. But if I open it and it's a meticulously researched letter about municipal bond risk and a pitch for financial planning, you haven't lied.
Right. You delivered on the premise of the question.
You used a question to bypass my natural apathy toward financial mail, so the rule is never spill your guts in the envelope, but never write a check the letter can't cash.
That is a perfect way to put it. Don't summarize the whole pitch on the outside. Instead, use a question or a very specific tease to establish instant curiosity. If you promise a secret inside, there better be a really good secret inside.
You are leading them down a highly intentional path. You are getting them to take a micro action opening the envelope based on a micro promise.
Exactly. Step by step.
But what happens the moment they open that envelope? I mean, their eyes fall on the first sentence, the opening hook.
The moment of truth.
Yeah. You've gotten past the bouncer, you are inside the club, but you still have to start a conversation before they just turn around and walk right back out.
And the source text is basically an encyclopedia of how to do this. It has a massive library of strategic openings.
Because one size doesn't fit all.
Not at all. It operates on the premise that sameness equals boredom and overuse equals abuse. We need a wardrobe of openings.
A wardrobe, I like that. You can't wear a tuxedo to a beach party.
Right. And you can't use a hyper-aggressive Wall Street sales hook for a cozy relationship-building newsletter for a local bakery.
It would just be so jarring.
The analogy of a wardrobe is perfect. You need to tailor the opening to the specific target audience and the specific emotional payload of the message. Let's actually spend some time analyzing a few of the most powerful hooks detailed in the sources, because the mechanics of why they work are deeply rooted in cognitive psychology.
Let's do it.
Consider the what-if opening.
Oh, I love this one. It's so cinematic.
It is. The text gives a classic example.
Yeah.
What if you had bought Miami Beach property in the 1920s?
Okay, so structurally, why is that so effective?
Well, think about how you react to it.
It instantly triggers regret and greed simultaneously
Exactly.
because everyone knows Miami Beach property exploded in value. By asking what if, you force the reader to actively imagine a scenario where they made a brilliant, life-changing decision.
They are visualizing the wealth. They are feeling the sand between their toes.
Right. But they also know they didn't actually do it. They missed out. So they're experiencing loss aversion for something they never even had in the first place.
It's manufactured FOMO.
Yeah. And because you've put them in that primed emotional state, they are incredibly receptive to whatever you say next, which is usually something like, well, you missed Miami, but here is your second chance.
You've used a rhetorical question to insert the reader into a narrative of missed opportunity, priming them to seize the current opportunity just to relieve that artificial regret.
It's brilliant. What's another one?
Then there is the believe it or not opening. The text notes that we live in an age of skepticism.
Which is more true today than ever.
Absolutely. If you are introducing a product or an idea that seems too good to be true, standard marketing hype will just bounce right off the reader's armor.
Right. If you send me an email that says, this is the greatest software invention in human history, my immediate reaction is, yeah, sure it is. Delete.
You sound like a salesman, and their defenses go straight up.
But if you open with some things you just have to see to believe, and this is one of them.
Notice what happens there. You are acknowledging their skepticism. You are joining them on their side of the table.
You're saying, I know this sounds crazy.
Exactly. I wouldn't have believed it either, but bear with me.
It builds instant rapport because it validates their cautious worldview. You aren't attacking their skepticism. You are validating it and asking them to just suspend it for a moment.
It's a linguistic judo move.
Yeah.
You're using the momentum of their own skepticism to pull them into the letter. That's a great way to put it.
But what about the more aggressive strategies? I remember the text talks about the cataclysmic decision opening, which just sounds incredibly intense.
It is intense, and it is fascinating, but it is incredibly dangerous for amateurs to attempt.
Because it's so easy to get wrong.
Oh, it goes wrong so often.
Yeah.
The cataclysmic decision relies on framing the choice to engage with the letter as a matter of monumental, earth-shattering importance.
Oh, high stakes.
The highest stakes. And the text provides a great example of how this can fail terribly when it's misapplied. A nonprofit organization sent out a letter that began, "Dear friend, I've enclosed a life or death seed catalog for you."
A life or death seed catalog?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but that is absurd. Unless those seeds grow into a cure for a deadly virus, I am not buying that framing.
And that is exactly why it fails. If the reader doesn't immediately buy into the premise that a seed catalog is literally a matter of life or death, the letter instantly becomes a comedy.
You're just laughing at it.
The credibility is destroyed in the first sentence because the hyperbole has vastly outpaced the reality of the offer.
Right. Now, to be fair to the mechanics of the strategy, the source text does note that these dramatic tactics are used across the spectrum by all sorts of organizations, and successfully.
You are?
From massive financial institutions like Commerce Bank selling credit cards to political and social organizations trying to rally their bases.
Because it works when done right.
Right. The text mentions a letter from Planned Parenthood as an example of a highly targeted opening that works specifically because it speaks directly to an audience that already agrees with the urgency of the premise.
Yes, the alignment is already there.
And similarly, it mentions a letter from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum as an example of an opening that takes a definitive, uncompromising stance. They know full well it might alienate some people, but it will deeply emotionally resonate with its core supporters. And just to be clear for the listener, we aren't endorsing the specific viewpoints of any of these organizations, but purely as structural examples from the text. They really show how high-stakes communication works when the audience is fully aligned.
That's the key. Alignment. The effectiveness of a cataclysmic or highly definitive opening depends entirely on the reader's experiential background and their existing belief system.
Your audience.
Exactly. If you send a life or death appeal to a cold list about something trivial, it fails. If you send a passionate, urgent appeal to a highly targeted list about an issue they already care deeply about, it acts as a lightning rod.
It galvanizes them.
It does. The amateur fails because they try to artificially inject cataclysm into a mundane offer. The professional succeeds because they correctly identify when the stakes are actually high for the recipient, and they just lean into it without apology.
Which brings up a really practical question about pacing for me.
Okay, what's the question?
If I'm writing one of these emails or pitching a proposal, should I fire my biggest gun first? I mean, should I put my absolute best benefit, my most shocking statistic, right there in the very first sentence to hook them? Or should I take a paragraph to build rapport first?
There is a deep tension here between two rules in the material. The first rule is indeed, fire your biggest gun first. Because, well, attention spans are short.
You gotta hook them.
Right. But the modifying rule, the governor on the throttle, so to speak, is that credibility is the key that opens the door to persuasion.
Credibility.
Yes. You cannot fire the big gun if you haven't established that you are in a position to actually pull the trigger.
Okay, let's play this out so I can visualize it. If a total stranger walks up to me on the street and says, I can double your income by tomorrow, I ignore them.
You'd probably walk faster in the other direction.
Yeah, I assume they are crazy or running a scam. They fired their biggest gun, but they have zero credibility with me. But if a well-known financial advisor whom I followed for years, someone who has a proven track record of success, opens an email with that exact same line, I read it.
The words are exactly the same.
But the credibility context changes the reception entirely.
Precisely. If you lack established credibility with the recipient, your opening hook must establish that credibility before you make your massive claim.
You have to earn the right to make the pitch.
You do. The opening must perfectly mirror the persona you are projecting. You can't use an aggressive, I'll get right to the point opening if your brand is built on cozy, slow-paced storytelling.
It's jarring. It breaks character.
And breaking character ruins credibility instantly.
It's like an actor breaking character in the middle of a play.
Right.
The text actually asks this very pointed question. Who are you? Not your actual person, but the persona you are projecting on the page.
Right. Are you P.T. Barnum, the showman?
Are you Albert Einstein, the quiet genius? Are you Florence Nightingale, the compassionate caregiver?
Exactly. Because if Albert Einstein writes a letter, he doesn't open with, I have a free gift for you.
No, it doesn't match the persona at all.
You have to choose the right opening, put on the costume, and never, ever break character until the sale is closed.
I think, who are you, is probably the most important question a writer can ask before drafting. It strips away that blank page anxiety.
Because you aren't just writing, you are acting. You are channeling a specific voice for a specific audience.
And whether we are talking about the envelope, the opening hook, or the PS at the very end, all of these tactical elements rely on an underlying philosophy that the source material calls force communication.
Force communication. It's a great concept.
It's a slightly aggressive term, but I think it perfectly captures the goal. We are not writing to entertain. We are not writing to win a literary award. We are writing to compel a specific action.
And the sources identify three fundamental reasons why letters, and by extension, emails, proposals, and sales pages, why they fail.
Let's hear them.
First, they aren't a single coherent statement. Second, they don't get to the point. And third, they don't tell the reader what to do.
It is amazing how often we violate all three of those rules.
Every single day.
Because we let our egos get in the way. We try to be clever. We try to be subtle. We think subtlety makes us sound smarter or more sophisticated to our peers.
But in forced communication, subtlety is the enemy of response.
The enemy.
The text explicitly states that subtlety suppresses response. Cleverness, for the sake of cleverness, suppresses response. You have to get to the point.
And to help writers do this, the material actually provides 4 specific transition phrases that, when you use them, they literally force the writer to be specific and direct.
They are like training wheels for clarity.
I was looking at those 4 transition phrases in the text, and I actually tried using them in an email to my team yesterday.
Oh, really? How'd it go?
Well, the phrases are, for example, why, because, the reason is, and I have something you want. And honestly, when I tried drafting an email using the reason is and why, because, I felt a little naked.
I can imagine.
It felt incredibly unnatural at first, almost too bland. It forces you to actually have a concrete point rather than just hiding behind, corporate speak.
Yeah.
Why is the text so adamant about using them?
I can totally see why it felt that way.
Yeah.
We are trained in business to use passive voice and soft language to avoid accountability.
Right. Mistakes were made.
Exactly. But think about how these phrases function grammatically and logically. If you write the words for example.
Hmm.
You cannot follow it with a vague generalization.
You just can't.
You are forced to provide a concrete, specific instance. You can't say, we offer synergistic paradigm shifts, for example.
Yeah.
Synergy.
No.
You have to say, for example, we saved client X $40,000 last month. It forces the concrete.
It's like a GPS
The
system.
GPS?
Yeah, a GPS doesn't use subtlety. It doesn't say, you might want to consider altering your trajectory in the near future if you feel like it, perhaps toward the north.
Right. It doesn't give you hints.
It says, turn right in 500 feet. It eliminates all cognitive friction. It tells you exactly where and when to turn. Forced communication is basically the GPS of writing.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. A GPS eliminates cognitive friction, and so do these transition phrases. The phrase why, because, is equally powerful.
How does that one work psychologically?
It dismantles the reader's internal skepticism in real time. As they are reading your claim, they are naturally thinking, why should I believe this?
They're doubting you.
Right. So by literally asking why on the page, you align yourself with their inner monologue, you establish rapport, and then you force yourself to provide the hard evidence with because.
And the last one, I have something you want. It's almost primal.
It really is.
If I say that to you, your immediate, uncontrollable reaction is, what is it?
You have to know.
I have your attention, and now I am forced to get straight to the point and tell you exactly what it is and how you can get it. It strips all the ego out of the writing.
You must strip the ego out. You are writing to trigger a specific, measurable action from the reader. If you want the phone to ring or the link to be clicked, you have to prioritize clarity and momentum over sounding literary.
Which really brings us to the synthesis of everything we've explored today. From the PS at the very end of the letter, to the mathematical rules of lift notes, to the psychology of the envelope, to the wardrobe of openings.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. What is the soul of this chapter? What ties all of these disparate tactics together?
If we pull all of these threads together, the unified insight is intentionality. A successful deep dive into persuasion shows us that form overcoming substance is the enemy.
Intentionality.
Yes, every single word, from the teaser question on the outer envelope to the final PS at the bottom of page 4, must be a calculated step on a path.
You are guiding the reader down this path.
Nothing can be left to chance. Nothing should be a boilerplate template copied mindlessly from someone else because it looked good.
Right, like the fake PS that says, dear first name.
Exactly. When you understand the mechanics of why the I jumps to the PS, or why a question bypasses defenses, you stop guessing and you start architecting an experience for the reader.
And honestly, understanding this intentionality makes us much better, more respectful communicators.
How so?
Well, when we stop trying to be cute and we stop hiding behind dense jargon or unnecessary PPS clutter, we stop wasting our audience's time.
We do. We honor their time.
We give them clear choices, we respect their inbox, we offer value, we state our case clearly, and we tell them exactly what to do next. It's incredibly liberating.
It is the fundamental difference between hoping for a result and actually engineering a result.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Even though this source material is deeply rooted in the classic era of analog direct mail, the psychology maps perfectly onto our digital world today.
Human nature hasn't changed.
Not at all. The outer envelope, that's your email subject line. The lift note, that's the testimonial call-out box on your landing page. The PS, that's the final bolded line right above the Buy Now button. The technology changes, but the human brain doesn't.
Absolutely true.
Next time you open your inbox, take a moment and just pay attention to your own behavior. Take a look at the very first email that successfully makes you click.
Dissect it.
Yeah, ask yourself, did they just use the cataclysmic decision hook on you? Or the what if hook? Did the subject line ask a question to open a loop in your brain? And more importantly, what are you going to write in your next PS? Keep observing, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.